Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 536, Dominating the Era 5118 plus Worlds. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Qinming was somewhat surprised. The golden ranking had called his name right from the start, even specifically reminding him to be ready. It seemed it wanted him to wield his blade with sufficient ruthlessness when the critical moment arrived. While the totem faction knew little about Tai Yi, the situation was different on the Jade Capital's side. When they heard Tai Yi was present, a wave of clamor swept through the crowd. Many people's eyes shone with divine light as they searched for him. In the past, upon the sword-fighting platforms suspended high in the 9 heavens, Tai Yi had claimed the top spot. How could he not draw attention? For more than 2 years, countless people had searched for Tai Yi and Yi Jian One Sword in hopes of uncovering their true identities, but they had all failed in the end, letting the matter drop. Now, hearing the name Tai Yi again stirred up old memories. On those dueling platforms of the past, he had been a powerhouse capable of suppressing heroes from all walks of life. Who, exactly, was the person behind that identity? Clad in black and gold armor that shimmered with a cold, metallic luster from head to toe, Qinming walked silently yet firmly out of the Mountain Sea realm. He had no idea how many people were watching him, all with searching gazes. Many of their looks were so intense they felt almost physical, as if they were desperate to step forward and tear off the visor covering his face. Yet, the golden ranking radiated a golden glow, its spiritual chains piercing the void and powerfully upholding the order of the Mountain Sea Xuanhuan realm. No one dared to break the rules recklessly. Even within the opposing totem faction, many beings turned to look his way. The golden ranking was calling out names across different tiers of power, from ancient monsters to young prodigies, and most of them were renowned figures. The totem faction was also selecting its champions. These beings were all utterly abnormal, some looked dangerous at a glance, and even legendary species made their appearances. More and more figures emerged, each with a formidable background. The atmosphere was tense, but both supreme civilizations were exercising restraint. If they had a choice, neither wanted to flip the table and immediately erupt into a bloodbath of the highest magnitude. There were consequences that neither side could afford to bear. A supreme-level confrontation was not something to be initiated lightly. Deep within the night mist world, perhaps some crimson eyes had already opened, gazing toward this place. If there were any advantage to be seized, they would absolutely intervene at the opportune moment. Within the Mountain Sea Xuanhuan realm, some were filled with worry, while a faction of radicals felt utterly stifled and humiliated today. This totem civilization is truly arrogant. They seize our territory, barge into our home, and yet dare to act so forcefully. I'm tempted to strike them down mercilessly. Don't rush. We'll deal with them sooner or later. The current situation brought to mind accounts from ancient texts. In ages past, a supreme Earth immortal dynasty had faced provocations from a third-rate demon kingdom. Along the border, they had ultimately driven back and pursued the enemy using only stones and iron bars. They had refrained from unleashing their nation-shattering ultimate weapons and had not even deployed standard-issue armaments. This was because deep within the night mist world, crimson eyes watched, waiting for the supreme Earth immortal dynasty's surroundings to be ignited. They sought to drain its strength through various forms of chaos, biding their time to enter the fray. You have someone backing you, don't you? The golden ranking's voice boomed. A massive black mountain, supported by 108 heavenly god phantoms, loomed high above, radiating a heavy and oppressive aura. The experts from both major factions were startled by the golden ranking's words. Could this truly be a reenactment of events from the ancient past? The totem sacred mountain replied, you overthink things. We are no mere subordinate civilization, we also stand among the supreme. Who could possibly stand behind us? The golden ranking continued to call out names. This wasn't a stage for a single person to shine, at most, they just needed someone to back them up. The two major factions were primarily assessing each other's caliber and heritage across various domains. A supreme civilization required peerless experts to suppress the present era, a rising middle-aged generation to form its backbone, and a flourishing new generation to ensure prosperity. Any missing link would mean the civilization could not be considered truly powerful or sustainable. Today, both sides were thoroughly probing each other's depths, weighing their respective strengths. This wasn't just a struggle for the present, it concerned the distant future. If the older generation won, they would dominate the current era. But if the middle-aged and younger generations triumphed, they would secure the future. A crushing victory would make the opponent realize that in the next supreme confrontation, they would face another devastating defeat. Therefore, the golden ranking was prepared to unleash its full power to crush the enemy's arrogance. It summoned Tai, a human-shaped killing machine whose true depth it knew all too well. Furthermore, the core disciples of the Jade Capital stepped forward. When Xie Xian and Wei Shuzhen walked out, no one was surprised. After all, their status was nearly transcendent, they had already begun to receive the supreme inheritance of Jade Capital. However, who was Qian Cheng? Many were completely in the dark, with only a select few recognizing him. When Tang Yusheng's name was called, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Rumor had it that the Taishu direct lineage were descendants of the Lord of Jade Capital, making their clan one of the orthodox factions. Jin Puti, Golden Bodhi, Xiao Jinyi, Pei Qingwu. Familiar names reached Qin Ming's ears, drawing many gazes as people searched for their figures. Some frowned deeply, privately speculating that the so-called friendly exchange, to avoid misjudgment, was merely an appetizer. A localized war would likely erupt in the end. After all, the Golden Ranking still wanted to fight, their territory had already been occupied. How could they not assert their dominance in the end? Otherwise, some supreme hunters deep within the Night Mist world might look down on them and eventually decide to intervene. What needed to be avoided should be avoided, but what needed to be fought must be fought. As for the group of barbarian gods who had successfully invaded, they hoped to avoid such a situation. After all, they hadn't suffered any losses yet and hoped to deter their opponents into backing down. The two major factions faced off. Before the magnificent immortal palaces and the lustrous Jade Palace, fine patterns spread across the open ground, quickly unfurling like a carpet crafted from the pelts of high-level heteromorphs. Only a few ancient monsters could fly through the sky with their physical bodies. The rest still needed to keep their feet on the ground. As the true totems entered the arena, a wave of savage aura swept over them, accompanied by the sounds of ritualistic chanting. These beings were of great renown, worshipped on divine altars by countless tribes across the distant lands. Some wielded the more primitive powers of wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, as well as the divine might of Tiān and the sun divine might. Though they bore a savage, untamed style, their power was undeniably immense, for how else could heavenly gods have been born from them? Other totem gods had evolved with the times, learning to manipulate human hearts and invade other civilizations, parasitizing them to draw sustenance. They had long since become unfathomably deep and powerful. Their forms varied wildly. Some were divine spirits in the shape of colossal beasts, while others were totems manifested as balls of flame. Their origins lay primarily in the primitive worship of the ancients. In the era of eating raw flesh and drinking blood, it was not uncommon for devastatingly powerful beasts to become totem bearers. The strength they gained was drawn mainly from the terror the ancients felt toward them. With this foundation laid, the colossal beast lineage remained a vital branch of the totem system, even in later ages. Some totems had even actively chosen to giant beastify. For instance, among this group of 7th realm totems, there was a giant rat, stronger than a mammoth, enveloped in 7 crimson divine rings. This indicated that even if placed within the immortal path system, it would be comparable to a 7 convergence realm, a truly terrifying prospect. On the Jade Capital's side, the ancient monsters who appeared were all profound and unreadable. From the ancient mountain lord of Star Mountain to the cave lord of Purple Cloud Cave, they remained silent. Of course, there were exceptions. The dog sword immortal was full of bluster and defiance. It clamored that it had come merely for sightseeing and refused to take orders from the heavens, exuding the aura of a rebel. Moreover, it had discarded its standard issue armor. This was mainly because heavenly god Lu had laid the foundation for it. Lu Mo had escaped from Jade Capital City and severed his past. For 500 years, the dog sword immortal had fallen and undergone nirvana alongside Lu Mo. Not only had its skeletal structure, cultivation, and own system been reshaped, but its beliefs had also been deeply influenced. The Golden Ranking sent a sound transmission. In this otherworldly war, I hope you can contribute your part. I am not the Jade Capital, I have never used Dao chains to bind participants. On the contrary, if your achievements are sufficient, the primordial chi I bestow will not be taken back, it will be a permanent gift. For real. The dog sword immortal's interest was piqued. In this era, even he had to hesitate before striking, fearing he would be drained to death. Primordial Qi and Xuanhuan Qi, heavenly treasures of this caliber were priceless, capable of sustaining a powerful cultivator's state. Across the battlefield, some totems noticed the dog sword immortal seemed to be playing both sides. They immediately broke into laughter, and one even tried to recruit him on the spot. What are you laughing at, you dead rat? The dog sword immortal glared. The rat god, as sturdy as a mammoth, maintained a majestic air before his subordinates. Impudent. He rebuked. Then, he sent a secret sound transmission. Fellow Taoist, join us. With your current cultivation, if you were to become a totem and be revered by the countless races of this land, your strength would surely advance by a great leap. In truth, a portion of the totem system's fresh blood was recruited in exactly this manner. The Dog Sword Immortal countered, your system is flawed. While you seem to spread your fame far and wide by accepting the worship of various races and tribes, you are actually being influenced by your subjects. In your old age, your consciousness will become muddled, you'll even go mad, and fall into the abyss. The giant rat totem replied, fellow Taoist, are you underestimating us? The Dog Sword Immortal, having received the Golden Ranking's promise, was eager to establish his name and achievements. He challenged, what's wrong? Got a problem? Then step down here, and this seat will slay you. The giant rat totem's face darkened. 7 blood-red halos roared around his body, distorting the night sky and scattering the clouds. He replied with unwavering toughness, you truly are a dog, turning on me in an instant. No one expected that among the top ancient monsters of the 7th realm, these two would be the ones to clash. From the shadows, someone sneered, a dog catching a rat, meddling in other people's business. Undoubtedly, that single sentence had instantly offended 2 great masters. The Dog Sword Immortal's expression soured. His gaze swept over the cat-faced humanoid totem opposite him, then turned to the people from the ancient mountain peaks. After all, he had once slain their earth immortals. Today, this old man will clear his name. From now on, the beast god returns. The Dog Sword Immortal's form shifted, transforming into a black and white bear. He wore a straw raincoat and a bamboo hat, and he drew a bamboo sword that glowed with a faint green light. At first, when the crowd saw his new form, round, plump, and somewhat comical, they almost laughed. But when he unsheathed his sword, causing the night mist sea to collapse and a terrifying sword light to cleave the heavens, everyone's expressions changed. Even the 7th realm experts now wore grave expressions. A few familiar faces couldn't help but recall the scene of a dog and a sword hunting down the 4 great earth immortals. Back then, he had yet to reveal his true form. Now, the panda sword immortal had finally appeared. The yin-yang black-white diagram spun beneath his feet, propelling him into the sky as he radiated the aura of a peerless sword immortal. Come, let me slay you. He gestured, and a terrifying sword light shot toward the giant rat. Boom. The mammoth-like giant rat, shaking its 7-layered crimson halo, leapt into the air. The 2 mighty combatants erupted into a world-shaking battle. The old generation fought to the death to dominate the era, and they were the ones to draw the curtain on this grand spectacle. Everyone watched from below, but the combatants' realms were too high. Fighting in the boundless heavens, their figures vanished from sight, leaving only the sword light to tear through the black sky. Thousand-fold sword chi caused the thick clouds below to surge like a vast ocean, its waves crashing against the heavens. With a thunderous boom, a blinding sword beam, thicker than a mountain, pierced through the heavens and earth. It shone with such blinding brilliance that it tore the night sky asunder, as if the stars were returning to their places and the constellations were reappearing in the world. A shrill scream echoed as a rain of blood fell. Each drop burned like a meteor, piercing the night sky and crashing down in a torrent of fire. The giant rat totem was decapitated, its massive, headless corpse plummeting from the sky. Fortunately, the golden ranking and the black mountain radiated light, blocking the dense rain of blood. Otherwise, every single drop of blood could have pierced through a powerful expert. This was the blood essence of a top-tier 7th realm expert. Ordinary people couldn't withstand its corrosive power, and their bodies would have exploded. The brilliant blood rain fell, burning and rumbling like a shower of falling stars. The scene was magnificent. High in the night sky, the black and white bear stood upon the yin-yang diagram, holding a sword in one hand. The sword's blade glowed with a green light as it hoisted the giant rat's massive head. Endless sword chi continuously slaughtered the totem consciousness imprisoned within the skull. He just killed it. Truly terrifying. A peerless sword immortal. Many were shocked, their voices escaping in gasps. On the side of the totem faction, many experts also felt their scalps tingle with dread. How was that? The golden ranking asked. The totem's sacred mountain replied, it's only an initial defeat. It means nothing. Let the friendly exchanges on other levels begin. The golden ranking said, of course. The middle-aged generation is competing for the future. Let the flourishing generation practice and see what they are made of. The black mountain boomed, since you've put it that way, let's keep it simple. We'll establish a future battlefield, and let the vigorous forces under 18 compete. On the Jade Capital's side, everyone was stunned. Their elite expeditionary force had very few members under 18. Although the battle formation golden ranking had formed required the participants to work together with a single heart, the strength provided by those who were too young was relatively limited, and thus they were not given much importance. Golden ranking replied, very well. I will select a few new participants. Secretly, he notified Qin Ming, preparing to enter the fray. I'm over the age limit, Qin Ming replied privately. In a few more months, he would be 22. How could he still be a youth under 18? Golden ranking said, don't you know? After multiple awakenings and nirvanas, if you examine your physical body and spiritual origin imprint closely, you are still under 18. Qin Ming was stunned. How is that possible? Have I really returned to my youth? The last time, in the other world, he had consumed a large amount of thunder medicine and used 5 elements materials to aid his breakthrough to the late heart lamp realm. He had indeed felt his body and mind become exceptionally pure after that nirvana. After multiple drastic transformations, he had actually reversed his growth. The golden ranking called out again, selecting several individuals, all of whom were from the demon race. Back then, when you attacked Night Prefecture, although it was an internal conflict, there were shadows of the great beast behind you. Now, prove yourselves, the golden ranking declared. The demon race's brows furrowed in deep thought. An old man stepped forward, his voice heavy. Back then, we acted out of desperation for the supreme scripture of the demon race. We were indeed manipulated, but we never actively colluded with the totem civilization from outside the domain. No need for words, the golden ranking replied. Prove yourselves in the blood battle. Then, it turned its gaze to the opposite side. Your reach was too long, you couldn't restrain yourselves back then. From the demon race, 4 youths stepped forward, all under 18. Among them was Zuo Heng, a prodigy of unparalleled talent, the next pillar of the demon race after the demon queen's descendant, Li Xian. Zuo Heng, nearly 18, had eyes that shone like stars. His black hair fell loose, giving him the appearance of a human youth. He had shown his brilliance at a young age, gaining immense fame after slaying a vicious tiger in his childhood. He was the first to take the stage, facing off against a generation of the totem faction, their life auras brimming with vitality. HMPH, leave it to me. A lion-faced youth stepped forward from the totem faction, his human body radiating a divine halo. Immediately, many people's hearts sank. The golden ranking spoke, nurtured as a totem since childhood, enshrined upon a divine altar. You harbor great ambitions, or you preparing for the coming golden age by trying to cultivate multiple supreme powerhouses? Aren't you afraid he might be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of resources and perish prematurely? The pitch-black mountain glowed as it replied, it matters not. In our totem system, there is no shortage of peerless geniuses. In the future, as long as 1 or 2 succeed, it will all have been worth it. The lion-faced youth was tall and imposing, his golden mane blazing like a divine halo wrapped around his neck. With a single roar infused with Dao rhyme, he shook the night sky, causing the thick fog to explode. He and Zuo Heng clashed immediately, the battle raging with extreme intensity. The hearts of the demon race grew heavy. Zuo Heng was the number 1 among their younger generation, yet he had encountered such a terrifyingly powerful foe right at the start and failed to gain the upper hand. Could they be facing a crushing defeat? The two fought to a stalemate, the battle brutal and bloody. In the end, each had lost an arm and a leg, their chests and abdomens torn open, nearly ripped apart. Only then did the fight conclude in a draw. Though the demon race's spirits were heavy, they had no choice but to immediately send out their second top young genius. For them now, victory or defeat was not the priority, what mattered was showing the right attitude. If they were accused of colluding with the totem civilization, they would face severe consequences. From the totem faction emerged a young man named Mao Hai. Though clearly human in form, his black hair was so thick and dense that he resembled a black divine ape, especially since he wore no clothes. Mao Hai was ferocious. Though not tall, his body contained terrifying strength. He wielded a heavy wolf-tooth mace, and a layer of dark light flowed around him, forming a protective divine ring of black. Without a doubt, he had undergone totemization. From a young age, he had been placed upon the divine altar, receiving offerings and sacrifices from his clan. You're so weak. Mao Hai stared at the demon race's second prodigy. In truth, this young man from the demon race was indeed far inferior to Zuo Heng. Boom. The moment the battle erupted, the demon prodigy was struck with such force that his arm spasmed, blood gushed from the web of his thumb, and his exotic metal long spear flew from his grip. He was no match for Mao Hai. His desperate attempts to adapt lasted only 4 moves. With a sickening thud, the wolf-tooth mace smashed directly into his face, shattering his entire visage and causing his head to explode. The demon race youth's death was utterly gruesome. His strength paled in comparison to Mao Hai's. In truth, the only thing that had slowed his demise was his standard-issue armor, which proved difficult to pierce. Otherwise, he would have died even sooner. Pathetic. Are the youths here in jade capital made of paper? Mao Hai laughed wildly, swinging his blood-stained mace. Upon hearing the clan elder's telepathic command, the third demon race youth stepped forward without a word. The fight was just as one-sided as the others. The demon race prodigy failed to last 4 moves before Mao Hai's mace crushed his skull. Bone fragments and gore sprayed everywhere as his headless body collapsed to the ground. Too pathetic. You're disappointing me, Jade Capital, Mao Hai jeered. In the totem faction's camp, a group of youths grinned and erupted in mocking laughter, the atmosphere light and jubilant. Who's next? Mao Hai demanded coldly. Just as the demon race elder was about to send his final fighter, the golden ranking intervened. Hearing the telepathic message, Qinming stepped forward with unhurried composure. He was clad in black gold armor that covered him from head to toe, his feet enveloped in a dark glow as he walked steadily into the arena. Another one coming to die. Mao Hai laughed, swinging his mace as he approached. The heavy weapon was still stained with the mangled flesh and blood of two demon race youths, the gore dripping steadily down its length. With a thunderous boom, he suddenly accelerated, swinging the mace at Qinming. The strike unleashed a terrifying white shockwave, accompanied by a daunting, awe-inspiring aura of Tao. He was undeniably formidable. Had he not been destined for an early death, he would surely have become a top-tier totem in the future. Qinming stopped, his feet rooted to the ground as he stood as steady as a pine tree. With a sharp shring, he drew the standard-issue long blade he had chosen. A brilliant, snow-white flash of blade light erupted, like lightning, yet like fire, illuminating the battlefield and striking fear into the hearts of those who witnessed it. The blade struck, its terrifying aura devastating. When it collided with the mace, the heavy weapon didn't just break in two, it shattered completely. Without losing any momentum, the long blade sliced through the air with a PFFT, cutting into Mao Hai's face, which had shifted from astonishment to pure terror. The blade then carved through his body. Mao Hai's head shattered first, followed by his entire body exploding, unable to withstand the overwhelming power of the strike. Qinming held nothing back. Facing a monster enshrined on an altar, a creature in the early stages of totemization, he chose to go all out. The result was a single, explosive strike that shattered his opponent. Blood sprayed everywhere, yet not a single drop touched him. With a sharp clang, he sheathed his blade. The steel remained pristine, untainted by blood. Who's next? Qinming asked. Though the words were the same, his voice was utterly calm. He lacked Mao Hai's arrogance, yet his words carried a far greater weight. A cold snort echoed from the totem faction as a mass of black mist drifted forward. Within it, the blurred outline of a human face could be seen. This was a monster formed from Tiān mist, an entity in the early stages of totemization, and therefore extremely dangerous. Yet, Qinming didn't even draw his sword. Instead, he condensed the four samadhi true fire in his right hand, fusing it with a portion of the primordial myriad thunder seal, and smashed it forward with a thunderous boom. For a moment, the night sky seemed to be filled by his brilliant fist, erupting with an aura of supreme yang as it slammed into the Tiān mist. A terrifying storm raged. Though the Tiān power lashed out wildly, it was incinerated by the true fire and struck by the thunder. The creature's form dimmed and then exploded into nothingness. The monster was utterly annihilated, body and soul alike. In the distance, Qian Cheng watched with a mix of surprise and suspicion, his mind racing. He sensed that the youth in the arena was a master of profound lightning techniques. If the blinding fire hadn't obstructed his view, he might have glimpsed some of the lightning seals. This youth possesses remarkable talent in the Tao of lightning, Qian Cheng mused. He would be a worthy peer to exchange insights with. And if he is an anomaly, perhaps I could even employ him to help me find the primordial myriad thunder seal. I could fleece him for all he's worth. Next, Qinming called out. His voice remained devoid of emotion, yet it sent a ripple of unrest through the youths of the totem faction, causing their pressure to mount sharply. These were prodigies of totemization. Seeing their comrade so utterly suppressed by another had filled them all with a mixture of dread and burning indignation. A golden giant beast stepped forward. Though its form was colossal, as majestic as two great elephants, it was still a youth. Such creatures, if allowed to grow normally, were guaranteed to reach the Grandmaster realm at a minimum. This was why their clan was considered so terrifying, earning the golden prefix in their name. Who are you? The golden giant beast demanded. Its entire body radiated a golden glow, as if bathed in layers of divine halos. Its blood qi, too, was golden, spilling from its skin to form various mystical runes. This was a mutated golden giant beast, and naturally, it was far more powerful than its kind. Tai, Qinming announced calmly. A stir rippled through the totem faction. The reaction from Jade Capital was even more pronounced. He was standing among the group of people just called out. I almost forgot his identity. That's Tai. He is truly worthy of the name Tai. Within the mountains and seas Shanghai realm of the golden ranking, many people's emotions surged, unable to settle down. The younger generation was extremely excited. After all, this was the very top-ranked expert they admired. The older generation, however, was completely numb. Only today did they learn his true age, under 18. This meant that when he ascended the sword-fighting platform back then, he was not even 16. At this moment, the Heavenly Venerable, the Bodhi Sage, and others felt their faces turn green. They had actually lost to a mere youth. Even Yun Jianyu and Changshi, the woman from the temple, were stunned, their expressions complicated. The old barbarian god said, no, perhaps he returned to a youth's body because he consumed treasure medicine. It's absolutely impossible for him to have been a 16-year-old boy back then. He was also one of the victims. If this got out, where would he hide his old face? That's right, he's not that young. The group of ancient monsters reached a consensus. Is he? Qin Ming. Tang Yusheng was inwardly shocked as she quietly approached the truth. She had always believed Qin Ming was one sort Yi Jian, but she had never imagined he could also be Tai. Now, all sorts of doubts were swirling in her mind. After all, the two had fought without holding back, knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses almost completely. The battle on the field erupted again. The golden giant beast roared, its fury unleashed as it went all out. It was indeed extremely powerful, far exceeding the expected level. Yet, against Tai, it was clearly outmatched. Blade light tore through the night sky. With just 2 strikes, Qin Ming split the beast apart. Without sheathing his blade, he stepped forward and delivered a 3rd strike, slicing open its flesh to extract a clump of essence blood from its massive golden heart. This must be top-tier extraordinary blood. The blood essence glowed brilliantly, flowing like a cluster of morning clouds and emitting a fragrant aroma. Qin Ming immediately stowed it away. This was a rare treasure medicine. How dare you? Some from the totem faction roared. What is wrong with disposing of one's own spoils of war? A voice echoed from the golden ranking. Qin Ming said, continuing to fight like this feels like I'm bullying them. Hearing this, the totem faction nearly exploded with rage. That human youth was too arrogant. The golden ranking secretly replied, do you feel this victory lacks honor? How do you know none of them have consumed divine treasure medicines to regain their youthful bodies? Totem transformation itself is a form of nourishment that allows them to undergo nirvana. In truth, some of them should have already exceeded the age limit. Qin Ming was momentarily taken aback, then spoke up, next. Come here and meet your death. Within the totem faction, a crowd seethed with fury. They were being blocked by someone named Tai. To clear the path and eliminate him, they had to remove this obstacle. He was already slaughtering their future totem gods. In the eyes of many, this was no longer just a competition for the future. In fact, this Tai was already showing signs of dominating the young totems of the present era. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 537, The Terror of Being Dominated by Tai, 5135 plus words. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Above the sea of night mist, the two supreme civilizations stood in confrontation. Qin Ming, clad in black gold armor, had just called for another opponent to step forward and die. Combined with his previous unreserved remarks, this bloody battle was no different from bullying the young fighters of the totem system. Who's going up? Kill him. The warriors of the totem faction felt a surge of intense frustration. Their comrades had been defeated and slain, yet they were still being looked down upon by that man. What made it worse was that he remained calm and composed throughout, as if merely stating a fact. There was no fierce provocation in his words or expression. Tai's indifference, his effortless confidence and composure, only served to stifle them further, causing their emotions to churn violently. Who can deal with Tai Yi? It's not about a desperate, drawn-out brawl, but about killing him cleanly and decisively. Only then can we salvage the situation. The main reason was that their side had been defeated too utterly and brutally just moments before. Mao Hai had been sliced apart in a single strike, the mist man had been burned to ashes, and the mutated golden giant beast's extraordinary blood had been harvested like a common medicinal herb in plain sight of everyone. From the totem faction, a youth with dark cyan skin stepped forward. His face was as sharp as if carved by a blade, his features defined and angular. His hair remained unmoved by the night wind, as if sculpted from stone. A body of metal and stone. Many gasped in astonishment. This was no ordinary being of flesh and blood. His body seemed forged from exotic stone and refined with exotic metals, his skin a dark cyan hue. He was tall, lean, and powerfully built, radiating a sense of immense strength. Yet, he could speak just like an ordinary person, and a vibrant life force pulsed within that metallic, stony frame. Is this a monster born of heaven and earth? If it were enshrined on an altar and underwent totemization, it would become truly terrifying. Legend had it that within this system, over half of the supreme totems throughout history were innate monsters. These beings were meticulously chosen, enshrined upon altars, and worshipped by countless clans until they finally ascended to the supreme realm. You're overthinking it, someone countered. Innate beings with the potential to become supreme totems are incredibly rare. You might find some with flawed bodies, or even those created through postnatal refinement, but not a perfect one. However, everyone knew that this youth with a body of metal and stone was likely terrifying, someone not to be trifled with, as he exuded an aura of extreme danger. A night wind blew, but his long hair remained motionless. His footsteps were powerful, treading out one halo after another, as if interwoven with mystical patterns. With a clang, he drew a long blade. It was made of the same material as his body, a dark cyan black, polished to a keen edge and flowing with the cold luster of metal and stone. Tai, come and fight. His voice was deep and resonant, fueled by an unshakable conviction. A brilliant light of consciousness shone forth from within his metallic stone skull. Qin Ming drew his blade. He had not been careless when facing Mao Hai or the Mist Man, giving his all against them. Facing this special youth totem, he naturally would not hold back. The snow-bright blade light made Qin Ming's figure appear even more towering. His eyes were like a cold pool, his chi aura restrained, yet revealing a calm confidence and an aura of complete control. The two prepared to clash blades, each steady and resolute, both possessing powerful convictions. An aura of killing intent permeated the air, so intense it shattered the cloud mist. Why are the youths of the totem clan all so strong? Over in Jade Capital, some people were discussing. They felt that if Tai hadn't appeared, their own faction might have suffered a heavy loss in this prosperous generation's competition. For instance, fighters like Mao Hai and the Golden Giant Beast might not have been defeated by just any youth. Even Zuo Hang, a top talent of the demon race, was forced to withdraw after a mutually destructive clash. This system holds an advantage in the early stages. They can use the altar to ripen their youth, allowing certain elite young fighters to receive worship from various tribes and nourish themselves. That's why they seem so exceptionally powerful. As for the late stage, the Jade Capital would certainly not be weaker than the opposition. Everyone had witnessed Dog Sword Immortal decisively slay the giant rat totem of the 7th realm. Especially since the totem system came prepared. They focused on cultivating a few young fighters this time, forcing them to undergo totemization ahead of schedule, hoping to embarrass us. This supreme civilization harbors malicious intent. They're trying to openly suppress us, showing the major organizations deep within the Night Mist world that the Jade Capital is weak, thereby tempting others to join the hunt. Some ancient monsters from the Jade Capital chuckled. The totem faction was likely about to lift a stone only to drop it on their own feet. Right now, they were clearly sacrificing their own youth. On the battlefield, the blade light erupting from the youth with the metal stone physique descended like a divine waterfall. The blade's glow radiated in all directions, and the blue-black chi distorted the void, creating a truly terrifying sight. Qin Ming remained composed. As he clashed blades directly, his snow-bright sword chi surged forward like a mountain flood bursting its banks, surging, roaring, and unstoppable. The two exchanged a flurry of strikes, their blades clashing with a resounding clang that sent dense showers of sparks flying. Runes flared to life, illuminating the battlefield in brilliant patches. Scratches appeared on the youth totem's metal stone physique, and shards of golden stone flew off. Qin Ming's blade technique was peerless, nearly reaching the Tao. He parried the youth totem's cyan black blade and landed a decisive strike, yet he couldn't cut through immediately. This is the metal stone physique. It's nearly become a rare treasure, impervious to blades and spears, and indestructible Vajra. Truly terrifying. Many had already realized the youth totem's most formidable trait, his indestructible body. No one could damage him. This was undoubtedly the work of a master who had helped him refine his metal stone physique. If that were the case, he could wear down any opponent even without a peak-level sword technique. Qin Ming remained undeterred. His long blade began to hum and vibrate continuously, the blade's light shimmering like sunlight dancing on a golden sea. The blade in his hand radiated a dangerous aura. In that instant, he drew upon the heaven-severing blade intent, merged it with the golden crow blade raising stance, and invoked the primordial myriad thunder seal. He had refined and sublimated several familiar layers of blade intent through 100 temperings. The resulting eruption of blade intent was like a heavenly blade slicing through the void, humming and vibrating as if it might shatter the air and fly away. This strike was like a blazing sun rising from the abyss, its light dispelling the darkness. Indestructible and unstoppable, it slashed toward the youth totem. With a PFFT, the snow-bright blade sank into the opponent's metal stone physique, carving downward from the forehead. The blade chi raged, its unparalleled sharpness splitting the totemized youth in two. This Tai is truly terrifying when he gets serious, he actually cleaved through an indestructible body of metal and stone. Slaying a half-Shantian monster with a blade. This is the fourth opponent Tai has killed. Qin Ming sheathed his blade and stood still. The youth with the metal stone physique lay dead, split cleanly in two by the single strike. Blood seeped from his body, pulsing with strong vitality. Qin Ming bent down and used his long blade to completely sever the body. He discovered a clump of cyan black blood essence. Though small in quantity, its medicinal fragrance was so powerful that it rivaled the extraordinary blood of the golden giant beast. Blood of metal and stone, now this is a rare treasure. Qinming sealed it within the highest purity spiritual crystal and carefully put it away. He looked across at the opposing side, his voice calm, not arrogant or overbearing, yet asking simply, who else? Undoubtedly, the totem faction's humiliation had reached a frightening peak. Their younger generation felt as if their lungs were about to burst. It was a gentle condescension, an indifferent slight. Tai, in his composed and serene manner, struck a blade into their hearts, leaving them feeling utterly miserable. I get the feeling he could single-handedly slaughter the entire younger generation of the totem faction. Over on the Jade Capital side, the atmosphere was starkly different, cheerful and exhilarating. Many were visibly excited, their faces beaming with smiles. What do you mean by, get the feeling? That's a fact, the absolute truth. After all, he is Tai. Among the younger generation, many held this former top ranker in high esteem. The totem faction, a group of young faces elevated to the status of gods, now radiated a chilling, murderous aura. A bird-headed, human-bodied monster spoke, what a pity I'm over 20. Otherwise, I would have personally torn him apart. If we can't do it, just admit defeat. Sending more people is just sending them to their deaths, said a strange beast enveloped in the five-colored harmonious light of auspiciousness. The totem faction did not give up. Another person stepped forward to fight. This youth was actually bound by chains that usually restrained him. Now, with a series of crackles, he violently broke them apart. The shattered exotic metal chains fell everywhere, piece by piece. He seemed to have unlocked his shackles and regained his freedom, emitting an extremely dangerous aura. Hey! He smiled, the corners of his mouth curving up with a chilling, almost crazed expression. Even his eyes gradually filled with bloodshot veins. His footsteps carried a specific rhythm, neither hurried nor slow. As he entered the battlefield, he showed no fear, instead, he seemed excited, as if preparing for a hunt. This totemized youth's eyes grew increasingly mad, his mental state bordering on instability. He licked his blood-streaked lips and said, the old fogies finally let me out. What should I call you? Qinming asked. Heart demon, the youth replied with a smile. As he cracked his neck, a faint bloody mist rose from his body, accompanied by a chaotic yet dense aura of spiritual consciousness, interwoven with terrifying patterns of cosmic order. Within the mountains and seas realm formed by the golden ranking, some old monsters noticed the truth. One of them spoke, this is a killing tool deliberately created by the totem civilization. They completely disregarded this person's future, forcing him to undergo a god-level sacrificial ritual in a short period of time. A monster created like this has a bleak future. He'll likely go mad soon, his consciousness completely muddied, losing himself entirely. Don't underestimate him. Surviving the divine being's sacrificial ritual is a miracle in itself. He possesses extraordinary abilities in the psychic domain, temporarily holding back the chaos and disorder. It's indeed troublesome. I wonder how Tai's cultivation in the psychic domain compares. Normally, this kind of totemized, heart demon, shouldn't appear at this age. On the Jade Capital side, some people's expressions changed as they overheard the elders' discussion. Was Tai about to be defeated? He might be inherently countered. Since I have descended, the battle can end. All you young geniuses of the Jade Capital together couldn't even stand against me. The heart demon was somewhat frenzied. It was unclear if this was absolute confidence or a severe mental issue, but his words were incredibly arrogant, mocking everyone. He abruptly stopped, his entire head glowing as if engulfed in raging flames. That was the chaotic psychic power, nearly materialized, spreading from his head and enveloping his entire body. On the Jade Capital side, many from the middle and youth generations scowled, feeling that this crazed youth was truly insufferable, completely disregarding them. Within the totem faction, several elder totems were sighing. Jade Capital's foundations are deeper than we anticipated. Even with our preparations, we couldn't catch them off guard. A youth like Tai must be an exception, right? Now that Heart Demon has appeared, he should be able to resolve the issue. This was their trump card. In truth, even among the younger generation, Heart Demon was a formidable figure, difficult to deal with. The Totem Faction Elder's original plan was for Heart Demon to first defeat the Jade Capital's youth and then directly challenge the other faction's younger generations. By doing so, they intended to crush the opposing faction's pride and shatter the confidence of their young disciples. Within Heart Demon's powerful consciousness, order was woven into his radiant light, preventing him from descending into madness. He swept his gaze forward and declared, "I will end this battle." With a thunderous roar, his psychic power surged. The void itself blurred, collapsing as if twisted by an unknown force, and a tangible domain expanded. Qinming felt no fear. He was considering whether erupting with chaos force, fusing heavenly light and consciousness with sacred demonic essence, true fire, and thunder seals, could directly burn through the opponent's spiritual domain. This would be a pure display of using raw power to overcome a technique. However, he was now Tai. If he used the silk book technique, there was a certain chance that Li Wanfa, Little Tathagata, and others would notice something amiss. Of course, the most important thing was that the sage was present on the battlefield of the seventh realm. If the sage paid attention, he could probably see through the true nature of the chaos force. Qinming decided to switch to a different method and break through with technique. Immediately, he activated the heart-subduing scripture. His consciousness became like a divine rainbow, illuminating the four directions. This true scripture was claimed to be one of the three most difficult true scriptures to cultivate on the immortal path. It consisted of only 4 pages of Jade Book, teaching that immortals arise from the heart, and by subduing one's form and spirit, it could be used for one's own benefit. It even involved the myriad transformations in Xuanhuan severing, truly making it an unfathomable scripture. After Qinming won the top ranker position on the Heavenly Sword fighting platform, he obtained the subsequent 2 pages of the Jade Book from the new rankings rewards, mastering a total of 6 pages. He had been studying it intensively because this was also one of the scriptures that several founding ancestors of the Silk Book technique had emphasized. It was listed alongside the body refinement harmonizing with the Tao scripture as a potential solution to the true form tribulation. Now, Qinming revealed his comprehension of the heart-subduing scripture. Mysterious psychic light rippled, as silk threads entwined around his body. Immediately, the entire area became hazy. Accompanied by a rain of light, Qinming's psychic will seem to be transforming this place into a pure land, creating a new small world. The heart demon youth sensed something was wrong. His once invincible psychic power had been blocked and was now being eroded, or more accurately, purified. Faintly, he glimpsed a pure land. Luminous rain ascended, and fallen blossoms fluttered like snow. A supreme totem stood beneath the ancestral tree, smiling down at him. An illusion. It's fake. He's trying to invade my mind. The heart demon reacted instantly, raising his defenses. Yet, while his psychic power was immense, it was fundamentally flawed, chaotic and prone to madness. Now, Qinming was exploiting that very weakness with a technique that bordered on the Tao. Within the Pure Land, Qinming had become the supreme totem god, controlling the entire realm. With the heart-subduing scripture, he tore open the heart demon's darkest, most wretched psychic hell. At first, the heart demon fought back, roaring and stumbling backward. But eventually, he was drowned in fallen blossoms as the luminous torrential rain descended, completely enveloping him. The heart-subduing scripture was also known as the subduing immortals scripture. Now, Qinming was using it to subdue the heart demon. The heart demon youth, the totem faction's killing machine, had the abyss within his heart pried open, his psychic power utterly shattered. His body trembled, and he roared incoherently. In his eyes, he saw himself as filthy and wretched, while before him, beneath the ancestral tree, the supreme totem god stood transcendent and untainted, gazing down at him. You see me, yet you do not kneel. Qinming's voice was calm. With the psychic light, he purified the darkness and suppressed the psychic hell, leaving the heart demon youth feeling utterly ashamed and lost, willingly surrendering to the purification. When Qinming first comprehended this scripture in Earth City, he had used it on Bai Meng for 15 days, transforming him from foe to friend. This had infuriated Tang Yusheng, who cursed Xiao Bai for recognizing a thief as father, and colluding with the enemy. Now, having mastered the heart-subduing scripture to a far higher level, Qinming's power was naturally even more terrifying. The heart demon's primal consciousness resisted fiercely at first, but it was ultimately subdued. He let out a low growl as his chaotic thoughts gradually stilled. Then, with devout reverence, he performed a grand kowtow and knelt. At this moment, everyone from both factions stood dumbstruck. The heart demon youth, an incredibly troublesome foe and the totem faction's own youth-killing machine, had been defeated, and so utterly. It was evident to all that his submission came from the heart. He performed the rites of a disciple, bowing in reverence again and again. The scene was truly astounding. The other youths of the totem faction were left staring, their minds blank. As for the old generation, their faces turned completely black. Even they felt humiliated. The terrifying monster they had so meticulously prepared had been subdued just like that. The heart demon performed the 3 kowtows and 9 prostrations, a formal and devout salute. He seemed to glow with a serene and tranquil light. The sight completely ignited the area. The Jade capital side erupted in fervent discussion. Taiyi's methods are truly profound. He even made the heart demon acknowledge him as master and worship him. What else is there to say? It's the same old phrase, Taiyi truly lives up to his name. On the Jade capital side, the middle-aged and youth generations were boiling over with excitement, their eyes burning with fervor. In contrast, the totem faction was shrouded in gloom. Many of the old generation had faces as dark as ink, feeling utterly disgraced. Even they found their reputations tarnished. With a whoosh, an ancient monster struck out, snatching the heart demon away. To have their meticulously cultivated prodigy kowtow to his opponent in public, even the old generation felt their faces burning with shame. Qin spared the youth. He knew that after being subdued by the subduing heart scripture, the heart demon could be turned into a useful tool if ever encountered again. He had already thoroughly explored the youth's psychic black abyss. Next, he declared, "Come and fight." This time, the young geniuses of the totem faction were completely silenced. No one dared to step forward. Even as their chests burned with frustration, they knew that facing Tiān was simply courting death. They were powerless against him. "Enough," an ancient totem master announced, forcibly creating an excuse to end the match. "The battles of the youth generation are merely minor skirmishes. It's time to conclude this." Tiān had defeated 5 young experts in a row, leaving no one willing to fight. This forced an early end to the youth-level competition. The golden ranking remained indifferent, as if the middle-aged generation could be sent up next without any concern. Qin withdrew from the battlefield, his steps calm and steady. From beginning to end, he had remained confident and composed. What a demon. A group from the totem system watched his retreating back, their expressions a mix of complexity and resentment. Not long ago, they had been dominated by this person. Their hearts seethed with fury, yet they dared not step onto the field, leaving them utterly stifled. On the Jade Capital side, the atmosphere was relaxed and joyful. Of course, many were also stunned by Tiān's overwhelming strength, which far surpassed that of his own generation. Heavenly Venerable Lu of the Lu family had a complicated expression. He remembered that he had once called Tiān, fellow Taoist. He felt extremely uncomfortable. That guy isn't even 18 yet. The Bodhi Saint was also speechless. Back then, he and Tiān had ascended to the heavens together, walking side by side to compete. Initially, he had assumed Tiān was just a young boy and had treated him with the condescending guidance of an elder, never taking him seriously. However, he had later watched in disbelief as Tiān soared to the top ranker's spot. At the time, he had felt ashamed, admitting he had misjudged the youth. But now, looking again, he realized he had misjudged once more. Tiān was still the same young man as before, utterly unchanged. Switch players. Fight again. An old totem roared, his voice thick with frustration. Their carefully arranged team of totemized youths had all been defeated, a failure that left them utterly exasperated. Finally, my turn. A young man with a bird's head and a human body charged into the battlefield, his expression fierce. He glared at Qin back and sneered, "It's a shame I wasn't in your group. Otherwise, how could I let you run wild? I would have torn you apart. I started my cultivation path late. If we were counting actual cultivation time, I could have competed in the under-18 confrontation." He was seething with resentment. Even from the sidelines, he had been unconvinced of Tiān's superiority, silently lamenting that he was over 20. Otherwise, he would have personally torn Tiān to shreds. The real show begins. Another totem declared, deliberately trying to turn the page on their previous humiliations. Everyone braced themselves as the truly renowned prodigies from both sides, including the core saints, were about to make their entrance. Qin turned his head and glanced at the young expert with a bird face and a human body. This man had twice insulted him, once outside the arena and once inside, showing utter lack of respect. The golden rankings voice rang out, "Tiān, continue. Complete 6 matches." Upon hearing this, Qin turned and walked back into the arena. For a moment, many people froze in disbelief. He was back. Holy crap, Tiān is going to fight the youth generation as a youth himself. I can't wait. Smash that foul-mouthed bird man. Within the mountains and seas realm, the young people who admired Tiān and were awestruck by his victories grew excited. He's entering the arena again. The members of the totem faction were momentarily stunned, followed by a wave of clamor. He's actually letting a youth fight his way into the youth generation. Is he trying to repeatedly rub our faces in the dirt? Awoo. Cut him down. Some young experts roared with beastly fury, driven by a mix of revenge and indignation. They felt the Jade Capital faction was insulting them, sending a youth to face the youth generation. Who did they think they were looking down on? Some members of the totem civilization shouted toward the arena, "Bird God, your chance has come. The heavens themselves want to grant your wish. If you can't crush him, you're not fit to stand with us." The bird-faced young expert snapped out of his daze, his face flushing with ecstatic joy. He rubbed his hands together in excitement. Was the heavens really letting him personally finish off this seemingly peaceful yet arrogant boy? Come on, come on, come on. Let Uncle Bird show you some real affection. Get over here. His entire body erupted with totem radiance. Behind him, a terrifying golden bird shadow materialized, bearing a striking resemblance to the golden-winged Great Pung. Qin drew his blade and strode forward. Runes lit up all over his body, merging with the night and resonating with the world itself, achieving unity of heaven and man in an instant. It had to be admitted that the young expert known as the Bird God, the first to enter the arena, was truly extraordinary. He had actually mastered a technique akin to a divine ability. With a long cry, the golden figure behind him surged in size, whipping up a gale as it soared forward to strike its opponent. It was as if a pure-blooded ancient divine bird, the golden-winged Great Peng, had been summoned. The bird-faced young expert sneered and lunged forward himself. Qinming swung his blade in rapid succession, striking the golden-winged Great Peng's hazy shadow. Each blow unleashed a terrifying burst of blade qi, and the dense runes on the blade's surface shimmered like a sea of stars. With each strike of his blade, Qinming unleashed a torrent of starlight that cascaded forward, crisscrossing and flowing relentlessly until it seemed to transform the night sky into a vast Shanghai. With a thunderous bang, the golden Peng phantom was shattered by Qinming's blade. Golden radiance erupted across the sky, scattering in all directions as streaks of light spilled onto the ground, and blood-stained feathers withered and fell. The young expert with a bird face and human body turned pale, his heart trembling with shock. That Peng body had been forged through sacrificial rituals, accumulating 2 months of power, yet it couldn't withstand the madman's blade. PFF'd. A spray of blood erupted as the expert himself was slashed. His right arm was severed instantly, and half his body was drenched in blood. Though the young expert with a bird face and human body fought and dodged with all his might, he could not escape his inevitable defeat. With another thunderous bang, Qinming's subsequent strike blew him apart. Qinming flicked his long blade, shaking off the blood. The edge remained brilliant and unstained. With a sharp clang, he sheathed his sword. He asked calmly, "Who's next? Come and meet your death." The younger generation of the totem faction was no longer composed. This youth had crossed realms to fight, yet he was still so dominant, slaying their companion, Bird God. He was truly terrifying, a formidable opponent indeed. Some of the older totems looked even more grim. They had prepared a youth-killing machine, Heart Demon, originally intending for him to cross realms and grind down the Jade Capital's forces. But in the end, Heart Demon had been utterly crushed, and this Tiān was now walking the very path they had planned for Heart Demon, a youth fighting against the younger generation. On the Jade Capital's side, everyone was overjoyed. Excellent. Tiān's kill was so satisfying. Watching this makes me feel as if I've eaten the legendary ginseng fruit, every pore on my body opening up, my whole being filled with comfort. He's bridging the gap between two age groups and tearing right through their ranks. An old totem, dissatisfied, questioned, "Has your Jade Capital concentrated all its resources to cultivate only this one youth?" "What do you mean by that?" An Earth Immortal asked calmly. The old totem replied, "We should swap combatants. Each person can only appear on the field up to 3 times. We need to see the overall strength of the younger generation, not focus on a single individual." "I agree," the totem's sacred mountain declared. It also suspected that the Jade Capital, like them, might be concentrating its resources to cultivate a few terrifying combat monsters, disregarding the potential negative impact on the young people's futures just to secure an immediate victory. The Golden Ranking responded calmly, "As you wish. Not to mention anything else, our side has an abundance of talent, too many geniuses to choose from. We can't even use them all." With that, it personally intervened and teleported Tiān, Zhuo Hang, and the others who had already fought back. It then said calmly, "Aside from those still on the field, I will select some new participants. Only when 100 flowers bloom does spring truly arrive, only when 10,000 flowers compete in beauty does true essence reveal itself." Qinming was teleported back into the scroll of mountains and seas, standing alone atop a towering peak wreathed in immortal mist, a place where Tao rhythms flowed and cosmic order intertwined, completely isolated from the outside world. Meanwhile, in the battlefield where the 7th realm ancient monsters were fighting, the Second Great War was still raging. They had been locked in fierce combat for quite some time, and the battle had moved so far away that it had reached beyond the sea of clouds, as if they were fighting beyond the heavens. The onlookers couldn't see the specific details of the battle, only the terrifying clashes of various immortal lights. Yao Chan, Kui Chongshao. The Golden Ranking called out a group of names. At first, these people were both nervous and excited. After all, they had been recognized by this war machine. The Golden Ranking added, "Whether you will enter the fray depends on the situation." These people were puzzled. Could it be that we are considered reserve members? In the mountains and seas realm, many people were discussing. What about Jing Jia Pai, the ones who pierced through the 36 heavens with a single sword strike? Where are they? Why haven't they appeared yet? We implore the Golden List to summon them, let the top-ranked prodigies show themselves. The Golden Ranking actually responded, saying, "We have many talents here. Do not be impatient." Immediately after, it called for troops again. "Qinming, enter the battlefield." To avoid raising suspicion, it couldn't call only Qinming. It also summoned Zhou Tiandao, Feng Zige, Yan Zuahua, Little Tathagata, and others. The Golden Ranking used divine radiance to transport them to the front of the battlefield. I'm back. Qin stood tall. He had actually returned. While he was still on that great mountain, he had been required to change into silver armor. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 538, appreciated by all 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. Countless gazes were fixed upon the scene. As people looked at that upright figure in the arena, they fell into deep thought. Once, for a time, a considerable number of people had suspected that Qin was connected to Tai. Even now, he had not been cleared of suspicion. On the path of awakening, the most elite geniuses at the pinnacle of the pyramid in the first realm need to undergo 9 awakenings. And this system has an even more ethereal legend, a pursuit for all of them, to strive for great nirvana at every major future threshold. If Qin were pursuing such a legend, stepping into that ethereal realm, then his continuous awakening and constant transformation would be no less than consuming a rare, great medicine. At this realization, the expressions of many shifted, and their suspicions deepened. A person who could continuously achieve great nirvana could probably reverse their growth, practicing something as absurd as returning to youth. If so, then he truly might be Tai. Some people had even once suspected him of being one sort Yi Jian. However, after multiple tests, people finally concluded that his cultivation was clearly insufficient, still stuck in the spiritual domain. Judging solely by his realm, he did not fit the description. Qin wore polished silver armor that accentuated his long legs and straight posture. Even from a side profile, he cut a striking figure, a picture of a young, valiant hero in his prime. The specialized armor included a faceplate that could conceal his true identity. Furthermore, the golden ranking had employed its own methods to help him deceive the world. Despite this, a few of the more astute observers felt their old suspicions resurface. I actually thought he might be Tai. Hiss, I think it's very possible too. In an instant, a wave of commotion swept through the mountains and seas realm created by the golden ranking. If it's the same person. The eyes of many high-ranking members from major organizations suddenly lit up. At this point, Qin only shortcoming was his cultivation realm, he had no other weaknesses. The Lu family, where the heavenly venerable resided, had high-ranking members present. The clan had long ago decided to send someone to approach Qin, but the outcome remained unknown. Jingli has seen him. How did their conversation go? I haven't asked her yet. Several high-ranking core members of the Huang family were gathered in the same area of the mountains and seas realm. An elder of the 6th realm personally inquired, has our clan's legitimate daughter made contact with him? No, we haven't. In heaven, there was a saying, when taking a wife, choose a daughter of the Huang family. This spoke volumes of the family's extraordinary status. Qin remained unmoved, keenly aware of the numerous gazes fixed upon him. Some were astonished, some curious, some scrutinizing, many burning with an intense desire to uncover his secrets. He knew all too well that walking along the river's edge always risked getting one's shoes wet. In this world, no secret remained hidden forever. Especially since Qin awakening path bore a striking resemblance to Tai's immortal physical body cultivation path. He remained inwardly calm, letting them dig for the truth. If they uncovered his first identity, it wouldn't be too serious. After all, neither Tai nor Qin had reached a high enough realm yet. They faced a harsh reality, the path of awakening was arduous, and its progress agonizingly slow. For now, as long as they didn't uncover his identity as one sword to cleave through the 36 heavens, he was safe. One sword Yi Jian was not bound by such limitations. He already possessed profound cultivation and could advance with unstoppable speed. If he were revealed as one sword Yi Jian, he would exert immense pressure on others, a force too shocking to ignore. At that time, many ancient monsters would likely want to capture him for analysis, once they learned his true identity. Qin pondered, you guys can slowly peel away my identities one by one. As long as my cultivation realm advances fast enough, everything will be fine. Right now, his progress was indeed far from slow. Although he had started late, he was already catching up to the top contenders. Given more time, he could become a true grandmaster. At his age, if he could break through the bottleneck of the 5th realm, the news would leave many stunned and in disbelief. The second round of the 7th realm battlefield for the ancient monsters concluded. This time, it was particularly brutal. The true god of Heavenly God Ridge and an old totem were both severely injured, their blood splattering across the sky. Unfortunately, the battle was too distant for anyone to dare approach or see the details. The youth generation's battlefield, however, was right before their eyes and naturally drew many spectators. By now, several individuals had already entered the arena and were engaged in a fierce battle. From the totem faction, someone questioned, isn't your side breaking the rules? That short-haired man with the full beard, bulging muscles, and a sturdy build. Is he really still young? Many people were confused. Who was he talking about? Little Tathagata also looked around at first, only to realize in the end that he seemed to be talking about him. That's right, I'm talking about you. You look fierce, you're old, and you look like a fierce bandit. How dare you pretend to be young? You're definitely an old geezer. Damn it. Little Tathagata really wanted to roll up his sleeves and slap that person to death. It was one thing to question his age, but to launch a personal attack on him was another matter entirely. Totem Sacred Mountain spoke up, considering Jade Capital to be lacking in propriety. The golden ranking made a sound and said, It's a problem with the system. Although his age is slightly higher, on their path, he is indeed still a young man in his prime. Everyone, both sides, should be more honest. If we are sparring, there is a bone-illuminating mirror in the night sky for inspection. Old people shouldn't enter the arena, or they will be discovered. The problem little Tathagata encountered was the predicament of the Path of Awakening. Even the renowned orthodox successor of Chaos Force was like this, which showed how difficult this path was to walk. For a moment, people couldn't help but look at Qin Ming. Earlier, they had shown a strange look at him, suspecting he was one of Taiyi's people, and now they were re-examining and pondering again. Those in the awakening system needed to endure years of cultivation to grow, the time required was truly immense. They were weighing whether they could afford to wait. Investing rare resources into such a person, only to have the harvest come so late, was it truly worth it? This Qin Ming isn't very old, and his progress hasn't been slow. Perhaps he's an exception. He fought Kui Chong just a year and a half ago. Back then, he was at the ninth heaven of the spiritual domain. What realm is he in now? Some people exchanged whispers, probing for Qin Ming's current strength. Kui Chongshao learned that after all this time, Qin Ming still hadn't broken through to the fourth realm, the heart lamp. This is normal. The path of awakening is so difficult to walk. If he could still advance like a hot knife through butter in this system, that would be truly unbelievable. The members of the Kui clan felt a wave of relief upon hearing this. They hoped the curse of the path of awakening, that it becomes increasingly difficult as one progresses, would manifest in Qin Ming. Some members of the totem faction noticed Qin Ming being the center of attention and low-voiced discussion, and their interest was instantly piqued. A five-colored exotic beast, its body flowing with totem radiance, spoke up tentatively, "Who are you? You seem to have a bit of a reputation. How about we spar? But before that, let's be honest with each other, state your age and realm." At this moment, Qin Ming's childlike heart was fully revealed. Just as the five-colored treasure shard had described, it was simple and pure. He truly answered every question asked of him. "I am 21 years old, third realm, ninth heaven," he declared frankly. The totem faction, a group of young experts, fell into a brief, stunned silence. They were all astonished, as if they couldn't believe what they had just heard. After a moment, someone burst out laughing. "Third realm? No way. Is that all you've got over there?" In their own ranks, even the lowest level fighter had reached the fourth realm. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even been eligible to represent their faction. The sacred five-colored exotic beast retreated, feeling that fighting such a youngster was beneath its dignity. It decided to leave this opportunity to the youngest members of its team. "You guys handle it," it rumbled. It wouldn't enter the fray lightly. Its true targets were Wen Dao, Wei Shuzhen, and others. It was saving itself for the final, peak showdown. Several totemized youths stepped forward to size up Qin Ming. They weren't very old, nor was their cultivation level particularly high. The reason they were chosen to fight was that they were all prodigies capable of defeating stronger opponents. A giant bull with fur as red as silk, looking as if it were engulfed in flames, spoke. "I thought I'd only be hunting mid-stage fourth realm experts, needing to cross realms to slay them. I never expected to come here and stomp on weaklings." Such giant beasts were the easiest for various tribes to accept and worship devoutly within the totem system. The fiery red giant bull's body erupted with sacred radiance as it declared, "None of you dare compete with me. Let me experience the pleasure of crushing my opponent with the overwhelming force of flying immortal mountain." The totemized young experts all laughed, not particularly bothered. One of them said, "We've always fought cross-realm battles. This time, it's no exception, though we're just downwardly compatible. Fine, we'll leave it to you." Meanwhile, Qin Ming was communicating with the golden ranking. "Do all these repeated battles count as battle merits? What rewards will I get based on my performance?" He suspected he would have to keep fighting, possibly getting caught in an endless cycle of involution. He wanted to get a clear answer, otherwise, he felt like he was being dragged along as forced labor. He was actively contributing and wanted some positive feedback in return. After all, with so many experts present, it seemed unfair that they were all singling him out to exploit. The golden ranking informed him that rewards would be distributed based on merit in the otherworldly war. As long as his achievements were brilliant enough, he could exchange them for true scriptures, precious medicine, and other treasures without any problem. I want a great medicine to resolve the true form tribulation, Qinming said. The golden ranking replied, although I'm not very familiar with that kind of tribulation, I have a healing precious medicine here that outsiders dream of. I expect it can meet your needs. I want 9 types of exotic metal to forge 9 miniature. Qinming stopped himself mid-sentence, feeling he might have been too conservative. Actually, I want to forge a full-sized long blade, not a miniature version. A great hammer would also work, he added, asking for an exorbitant amount. He knew that even a thumb-sized piece of exotic metal would fetch an astronomical price at an otherworld auction. If it were a full-sized long blade, its value would be truly inestimable. Sure enough, the golden ranking looked at him with disdain and said, do you really think rare exotic metal is like iron ore, found everywhere and easily mined? Who could be so extravagant? However, if you perform well enough, I might make an exception. I will specially authorize the forging of a long blade or a heavy hammer for you, made from the purest exotic metal. After their brief exchange, Qinming's heart pounded with excitement. He decided he would continue acting as a hitman, and not just that, he would actively seek out battles. He even began planning how to rotate through various identities to farm combat records and accumulate merits. Consequently, when faced with the young experts of the totem faction, he endured their insults and provocations with a softened gaze. These monsters, which could be exchanged for rare, great medicine and priceless exotic metal, no longer seemed ferocious or menacing. Instead, they appeared as shimmering gold, irresistibly alluring to him. Little human, have you been scared stupid? Why are you dazed? A giant beast with glowing fur that flickered like crimson flames taunted, steadily closing in. Its 4 hooves were as white as mud and fat jade, each footprint it left interwoven with Tao resonance. It continued its mockery, everyone else despises you, but this seat will reluctantly take you in. Qinming didn't mind at all. He replied calmly, old ox, thank you for delivering your head. The giant ox, expecting the other party to be enraged by its taunts, was instead met with such a gentle voice that it lost its composure first. Moo, what the hell? It bellowed. In an instant, the fire on its body soared to the heavens, bathing it in true sun fire. The white smoke erupting from its nostrils carried the scent of sulfur. Its 2 massive horns clashed like heavenly blades, their brilliance slicing through the night sky and piercing the heavens. It charged forward, its 4 hooves stomping down, causing the cloud mist sea to boil and then explode with a thunderous crash. This display of power proved its formidable might. In every great battle, it could overpower its opponents, not just in rumor, but as a truly extraordinary being of the totem faction. The night sky trembled once more. Qinming drew out a black jade hammer, forged from jade iron. With a resounding crash, it seemed ready to shatter the very heavens. Without a word, the man and the bull clashed in an immediate, fierce battle. Qinming had returned to himself and could now wield the techniques of the Path of Awakening. He unleashed the purest primordial chaos heavenly light, illuminating the entire hammer until it glowed with a crystalline translucence. Because of this, he could recklessly expend his chaos force, making his attacks utterly devastating. Qinming clashed head-on with the giant beast, which was several times larger than a mammoth. His hammer struck with heaven-shaking force, each wisp of released chi ringing out like sword light or blade glows. Crack! The distinct sound of something breaking echoed through the air as the great hammer shattered one of the bull's horns. Moo! The giant bull roared, pain searing through its very marrow. This opponent had charged in and met it head-on with such overwhelming force that it felt utterly irresistible. The human man in shining silver armor, whom the bull had once seen as a little cutie, now seemed like a demon god, stirring up gale winds across the sky as he swung his hammer, inflicting excruciating pain. Boom! Its protective divine fire surged, erupting into the sky. The sun divine flame raged, nearly boiling over into terrifying waves of fire. Yet, the young opponent in his brilliant silver armor showed no fear, relentlessly swinging his massive hammer forward. Dong! The light curtain formed by the sun god fire around the giant bull shattered. Moo moo, arg! The giant bull let out a pained cry, sounding more like a common beast than a divine creature. Qinming rained down hammer blow after hammer blow. The giant bull's skull shattered, its shoulder blades exploded, and then its chest, abdomen, and limbs followed. The giant bull bellowed in agony, its body bursting with blood at every inch. Cracks spider webbed across its skin, leaking brilliant totem radiance and runes from the wounds. It tried to heal itself, but it was too late. Boom! With 3 consecutive strikes from Qinming, the flame-red giant bull exploded. Blood and bone shards rained down everywhere. With a wave of his hand, Qinming used his adhesive force to draw a glowing orb of high-grade extraordinary blood toward him, swiftly and skillfully sealing it within a spiritual crystal. Members of both factions stood stunned. The human, so tall and slender in contrast to the giant bull, had been so fierce and savage that he had literally hammered his opponent to death. Not just the creatures of the totem faction, but even the young disciples of the ancient mountain sect in heaven were stunned. Though they had heard of Qinming, many were seeing him fight for the first time. So this is the path of awakening. Too reckless, too domineering. Is this truly one force overcoming all technique? I have a feeling that even the heavenly venerable in his youth would be beaten to a pulp if he stood before him. Shish. The heavenly venerable is in the 7th realm battlefield. Do you want to die? The spectators in heaven found it absurd. So this was the legendary Qinming, a man who favored such a simple, brutal, and direct combat style. Bai Meng felt a secret pride, as if he alone knew the truth. He thought to himself, my brother Ming's truly exquisite combat techniques aren't for everyone to see. Most opponents simply aren't qualified to force him to use them. Tang Yusheng, also watching the battle, couldn't help but recall the techniques she had personally experienced, and the suffering they had caused her. The bull god was actually defeated by a lower realm cultivator. A group of young experts from the totem faction exclaimed in shock. Indeed, a lower realm doesn't mean one can't fight fiercely. This human race prodigy is formidable. Now, while his realm is still low, it is the perfect time to eliminate him. However, no one stepped forward for the moment, all of them still assessing his true strength. Meanwhile, the other battles raging across the field had also concluded. The core disciple of Misty Peak, despite exhausting all his techniques against the abyssal shadow, was ultimately defeated and slain on the spot. Even his pure yang consciousness couldn't escape and was devoured by the opponent. It was said that this creature was a black shadow born from the abyss, a manifestation of the various tribes' perpetual worship and dread. The core disciple of Star Xingqian Mountain, a master of profound techniques, had all his acupoints erupting with starlight-like radiance, endless sword chi that ultimately cut down his opponent. Lu Zheng, a descendant of the heavenly venerable, was locked in a fierce battle with his opponent, his heart brimming with suppressed rage. His adversary was a human-faced bird, a creature even more loquacious than a chatterbox, spouting a relentless stream of words, its primary method of attack. In truth, it possessed a long, golden tongue, sharper than a spear forged from exotic metal, capable of piercing through the very void. Though Lu Zheng had mastered the ultimate golden body, faint bloody streaks still appeared on his skin. So this is the path of lower cultivation, from the night mist world. Just crude brutes. Like a rock in a latrine, stinking and hard. What, immortal physical body cultivator? Your lineage lacks any spiritual grace, reeking of the mortal realm. This was the human-faced bird. It attacked with lightning speed, its venomous tongue buzzing with incessant noise to unsettle its opponent's mind. Physical body cultivators like you, do you have to batter yourselves with clubs and smash your flesh with boulders every day? If that's how you forge your golden body, are you savages? Perhaps you're descendants of some barbarian tribe of ours. Listening to its incessant chatter, Lu Zheng desperately wanted to tear it apart. A proud immortal physical body cultivator, yet being so utterly despised. Your totem faction experts are called barbarian gods by outsiders. How dare you call others savages? Your own people still live on raw meat and blood. As totems, you're no better. Have you the nerve to judge others? Poochie. Finally, the golden tongue pierced Lu Zheng's chest. He was nearly torn asunder, but at the critical moment, his hands glowed, and he severed the long tongue. Both man and bird shrieked in pain. The battle ended in mutual defeat. Qinming faced his second opponent, a woman who radiated totem light from head to toe, bathed in immortal qi. She was truly extraordinary, with an outstanding aura. This was the result of countless tribes jointly worshipping a supreme relic. An ancient legend told of a supreme totem from a past generation who, while on the verge of death, attempted a tribulation crossing to achieve rebirth. In the final moment, the attempt failed, leaving behind a wisp of a totem soul that slumbered beneath the earth. Rumor had it that this woman had been manifested from the faith of the many tribes who had long worshipped the relic. Of course, others claimed she was merely an outsider, an opportunist who had quietly established her own altar at the relic site to intercept the power of the sacrificial rituals. Clad in white robes with her black hair falling to her waist, her eyes shimmered with a captivating brilliance. She moved with a graceful, ethereal gait, her steps light and fluid. Her red lips parted as she spoke. I've heard some people say you're a physical cultivator. It seems you're the lowest of the low in the lower cultivation ranks, not elegant at all, relying only on brute force for your attacks. Qinming replied calmly, you certainly know the hierarchy of disdain. He knew this woman had done her research and was well versed in the systems within the Jade Capital realm. She was attempting to exploit and tear open old issues and contradictions within opposing factions from the very start. The woman smiled. Join our totem faction. There is no distinction between upper and lower cultivators here. Once you're with us, you can ascend to become a power totem, a position of supreme status. Who would dare call you crude or unrefined then? Now that you're done talking, make your move, Qinming said calmly. He then added, you know nothing of the path of awakening. Today, I'll show all of you, if the path of awakening desires elegance, there is nothing it cannot achieve. Qinming stood still as every inch of his body flowed with crystalline radiance. He materialized a sheet of paper woven from chaos force. Then, he raised his brush and began to write. The characters, formed from heavenly light, were seared onto the paper. In that instant, the woman's hair stood on end. She felt an overwhelming sense of danger. To the onlookers, however, multiple layers of divine rings had risen around Qinming. He bathed in a rain of light, looking as if he were about to ascend to immortality. The woman unleashed her full totemization power. Dense runes flared to life as an altar materialized behind her, and the sacrificial chants of various tribes echoed through the air. She had gone straight to her strongest technique. Yet, the dozens of divine rings overlapping around Qinming seemed impervious to all techniques. The woman's ultimate attack couldn't even scratch him. Sensing imminent disaster, she turned and fled at top speed. But it was too late. In one fluid motion, Qinming materialized a sheet of heavenly light paper and sent it flying. It appeared as thin as a cicada's wing, yet it was woven with the textures of heaven and earth, its inscribed characters glowing with brilliance. Everyone knew he was commanding all techniques, unleashing the true chaos force. A single sheet of paper. Puff. It sliced the woman clean in half. Her protective light barrier and treasures all failed, severed instantly. Ah! She shrieked, her divine soul attempting to flee. But the glowing characters on the paper leapt up like brilliant stars, pinning her down so she couldn't move before incinerating her in a burst of flames. Boom. She exploded, her body and spirit completely annihilated. The sheet of paper fluttered down gently before bursting into flames. The resulting streams of light flowed like trickles of water back to Qinming's fingertips, which he then retracted. Holy hell! Many onlookers felt their scalps tingle. A single glowing piece of paper, inscribed with the true meaning of Qinming's scripture, had been flicked out and instantly slain a powerful opponent. You know nothing about Brother Ming. Bai Meng's eyes shone with pride. A low, muffled roar erupted like a sudden blizzard, overwhelming everything. A disheveled young man from the totem faction charged forward with thunderous strides. Evidently, he was deeply connected to the woman. Enraged, he charged into the battlefield immediately, intent on killing Qinming. Qinming sat motionless on the ground. With a flick of his hand, a seven-stringed zither imbued with ancient charm materialized, clearly formed from heavenly light. He plucked the strings, and as the resonant notes rang out, a terrifying surge of chaos force shot forward. Puff! The man exploded on the spot. Holy hell! Is this the true meaning of Silk Book that he mastered on his own, without any formal guidance or initiation? This chaos force is terrifying. Even the core disciples of the ancient mountain sects in heaven were shaken to their core. The destructive power of such a scripture could easily rank in the top 10 within the Jade Capital realm. The young experts of the totem faction were consumed by a mixture of shock and fury. Unfortunately for them, Qinming had already defeated 3 opponents. According to the rules, he was supposed to stop now. However, he wanted to test his limits. If you're willing, he said, looking across at them, I'm open to more challenges. Qinming's gaze swept over the opposing side. Fellow Taoists in the early stage of the 4th realm, and anyone below the 4th heaven, come at me, all of you. I will face you all alone. I wonder if you dare to step forward and listen to a melody of wondrous sound. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 539, Trampling an Entire Generation, 2 chapters combined. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. What was he saying? He intended to face every single opponent alone. His words were incredibly calm, yet they conveyed an overwhelmingly domineering conviction. Countless gazes fell upon Qinming, all of them stunned. In the eyes of his opponents, he was a madman. Though he sat quietly beside the 7-stringed zither, radiating a serene and ethereal aura, his actions were so domineering and arrogant that they could touch the heavens. How dare he utter such words? On the Jade Capital side, many were also watching him, momentarily lost in a trance. This Qinming is so resolute. Setting aside his strength, few could match his courage alone. He might well be Tai. Many of the younger generation were deeply moved by his words and actions. Some young women even stared unblinkingly, their gazes glued to the battlefield. Amidst the noisy chatter, scattered remarks could be heard. Qinming had no one to guide him, yet he had mastered the Silk Book technique on his own. This immediately made the Kui clan feel a sting of humiliation. Bai Meng's first reaction was that Brother Ming was simply refusing to leave. He was looking at the giant beasts, the abyss phantoms, and the others with a gentle gaze, clearly intending to farm some battle achievements. Between the two great factions, the interwoven orders of the world seemed to form a carpet made from the hides of high-tier aberrants, covering the night sky and emitting a soft radiance. Qinming waited silently for a response. To face the true form tribulation and obtain the exotic metal long blade of the highest purity, he was willing to risk everything, even if it meant shamelessly refusing to leave. In the totem faction, the elders remained composed, their expressions unwavering. Among the youth, many kept their emotions in check, but their eyes gradually sharpened with killing intent. However, a small group of radical totem seeds could no longer endure it. This arrogant man, with his serene expression and otherworldly aura, was openly provoking their entire generation. If they let him leave alive, they would still be stewing in resentment decades or even centuries later. Everyone, did you hear that? How arrogant this wretch is. He is insulting the dignity of every combatant in our totem system. If we do not slay him, we cannot vent the rage burning in our hearts. Allowing him to spout such nonsense in a place like this is like trampling on our altar. If we let him go, we will all be guilty, failing everything we've ever learned. Even the more composed youth, who had shown no emotion, now radiated killing intent. They truly believed the man in the arena deserved to die and could not let him escape unscathed. Where are those below the fourth heaven, those who usually boast of their ability to slay stronger foes and look down upon the seeds of wild gods from other civilizations? Go and crush him. The totem faction's combatants were whipped into a frenzy, their fury boiling over. They felt this was an insult too great to endure. A group of young experts stepped forward, acknowledging Qinming's words. With mutual consent, they agreed to continue the battle. Soon, 5 beings emerged, a treant, a silver giant bear, a flame-shaped monster, and a young man and woman. Bathed in totem radiance, their faces were grim and their auras oppressive. As they advanced, each was shrouded in a dense, luminous mist. Within their respective sacred radiance, faint images flickered, towering mountains, blurred altars, and even the vast throngs of their respective tribes. Across the land, countless tribes and cities revered them, offering worship and sacrifices. In this system, every totem possessed its own territory. The night mist world was so vast and boundless that it could birth countless totems. Only a supreme totem could span all territories, worshipped by all races, and even other totems would bow before it. Gentlemen, please. Qinming declared. The 5 great experts advanced in unison, their powerful strides shaking the ground. In an instant, it felt as if 5 miniature worlds were bearing down. The blurred mountain landscapes and sacrificial scenes behind them gradually sharpened into focus. The 5 totem seeds sneered coldly. The opponent had earlier provoked them with words, boasting that they should all attack him at once. Did he really think they would take the bait and engage in a duel of honor? Young man, you're dreaming. They mocked inwardly. Behind them, the group of youths nodded in agreement, faint smiles on their lips. Let that arrogant fool play the hero, they thought. Just go up there and crush him. Who does he think he is? Someone like that should be torn to pieces and scattered across the ground. Qinming, unaware of their inner turmoil, was simply focused on earning merit. Ding! A single, sharp note from a zither string pierced the night sky. Instantly, the crowd held their breath, falling silent as they watched the battlefield with bated breath, awaiting the clash of titans. The young man among the 5 totem seeds struck first. He was a rough-hewn figure of savage power, clad in animal hides and wielding a heavy serrated stone blade. His bronze-colored muscles rippled like coiled dragons, erupting in white chi as he swung the blade forward. The weapon was less a stone knife and more a jagged mountain range of stone, impossibly heavy. It shattered the night mist, distorted the void, and unleashed a deafening roar. Qinming sat cross-legged, his mind a pool of stillness as he played his zither against the enemy. With a sharp zheng, a single string unleashed a blinding heavenly light, striking out like a sky-shattering hammer. Before him, the young man's serrated stone blade trembled violently, its ceaseless roar muffled by the zither's melody. The blade's light scattered in all directions, held at bay by the sound. Many in the Jade capital knew that when the 7-stringed zither trembled, the spiritual light it emitted was the release of chaos force, a power so immense it made even the young experts tremble in awe. The young man roared, and behind him, the phantom of a mountain range materialized. The myriad ravines gradually took shape as a blurred sacrificial ritual began to manifest in reality. This was the source of his power, the foundation of his totem road. Now, resonating with him, he was mobilizing his strength to its absolute limit. The serrated stone blade in his hand, impossibly heavy, seemed to come alive. It transformed into a dragon-shaped mountain range and crashed down toward his opponent. This weapon had a storied origin, forged from the essence of stone mountains and imbued with the dragon chi of the peaks. It was now a malevolent blade that seemed to possess a spirit of its own. Qinming continued to play. From his fingertips and the zither strings, waves of chaos force flew forth, clinging to the blade like a dragon tamer controlling a phoenix, attempting to pull it away. Amidst a low hum, the stone blade tore through the air, nearly flying out of the young man's grasp. A dragon's roar echoed through the air as the serrated stone blade strained to break free from the young man's right hand, threatening to spin out of control. Kill. The other 3 experts couldn't just stand by. The 4 great experts struck simultaneously. The tree ant, its body covered in dragon scale-like ancient bark, swung its right leg. Crack. The sound was like a spirit whip striking, a thunderous boom that shook the very foundations of one's spiritual domain. From the front of its right foot, a thick root shot out like a blade or a spear, hurtling toward Qinming's head. The moment Qinming plucked the zither string, a blinding light erupted, striking the thick root and causing it to burst into flames before shattering. Meanwhile, the silver giant bear roared at the sky. Its paw, larger than a mammoth's, seemed to rise from a blood sea, with endless piles of corpses behind it, as if it had just clawed its way out of hell. This giant bear had once bathed a vast land in blood. Several great tribes there had been completely annihilated overnight for refusing to worship it, an act that had forged its blood-colored domain. It charged at Qinming, carrying an overwhelming and boundless killing intent. Qinming saw the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood, glimpsing the giant bear's past. His expression darkened instantly. His chaos force surged forth, accompanied by the roars of dragons and tigers. From the zither's strings, the primordial chaos heavenly light shot forth, transforming into a heavenly dragon and a white tiger. Together, they pounced on the silver giant bear. After a brief clash, the silver giant bear's skin split open, and it bled on the spot. This time, it was its own blood flowing, not that of the vanished tribes. Within the totem seeds, the flame-shaped monster and the young woman also launched fierce attacks. One carried boundless divine fire, while the other crossed the sky like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, leaving a trail of falling petals. In truth, those petals were densely packed, lotus-shaped blades. With a thunderous boom, the divine fire first boiled, then was scattered by a vermilion bird that had risen from the zither's music. The rain of flowers erupted, and the falling petals shattered, blocked by a wave of flowing light. The chaos force collided repeatedly with the lotus-shaped exotic treasure, creating a deafening metallic clang. In an instant, Qinming sat cross-legged before the 7-stringed zither, holding back the 5 great experts with only the heavenly light he had unleashed. The members of the totem faction's faces changed. This madman hadn't been bluffing after all, he was truly capable of holding off the 5 totem seeds they had dispatched single-handedly. The 5 experts felt humiliated. The opponent sat motionless, countering them by playing the zither, an act of blatant contempt. Yet, he had actually managed to hold all 5 of them at bay. Kill. The 5 totem seeds roared, launching a full-scale attack. They had to break the stalemate, otherwise, they would lose all face before the watching crowd. Behind them, the sacrificial scenes grew increasingly vivid. 5 miniature worlds pressed forward, one where the earth bled, and corpses littered the ground, another, a boundless sea of fire, one where mountains and ravines trembled as sword light soared, and another where a metallic lotus bloomed within the abyss. Qinming played the zither. The initial melodious, clear notes transformed into a relentless, clashing resonance. Heavenly light crisscrossed the void. He unleashed the chaos force to its absolute limit, battering the 5 great experts until their hair flew wild and disheveled. Their bodies were broken and bleeding. They exchanged incredulous glances. Has he really not reached the 4th realm yet? They fought with savage intensity. Behind them, the hazy sacrificial scenes materialized into reality. Countless tribes and innumerable savage races were kowtowing and worshipping, as if offering sacrifices to the heavens. In an instant, dense runes and yellow talismans seemed to rain down from an unknown realm through the void, descending upon Qinming to suppress him. Clang! 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 Qinming's fingers moved with incredible agility. As he swept across the 7-stringed zither, massive waves of chaos force surged forth, like a shower of comets falling from beyond the heavens, streaking across the sky. The sacrificial chants were abruptly cut off. The 5 great experts all coughed up mouthfuls of blood. Some were even struck through, stumbling backward in utter disbelief. They couldn't accept it. Just moments ago, they had been saying that if this madman were to escape unharmed, they would all be guilty. Yet now, after their joint attack, each of them was injured. The giant bear roared at the sky, standing atop his hazy altar. The woman let out a soft cry, her feet planted on the lotus flower within the abyss. The young man stood before the dragon-shaped mountain altar. Amidst the prayers of the various tribes, he held his blade with both hands and slowly swung it toward his opponent. The 5 great experts ascended their respective blurred altars, prepared for a desperate struggle, burning through their future potential in an all-out, no-holds-barred battle. Qinming's expression remained serene as he plucked the zither strings. In an instant, a heavenly dragon soared from the music. A great pung spread its wings and ascended to the heavens. A golden crow, wreathed in boundless flames, shrieked as it streaked forward. A heavenly phoenix rose from nirvana, its wings carrying the dual chi of life and death. Many onlookers stared wide-eyed. These were no simple manifestations of heavenly light. Certain legendary creatures were incredibly difficult to materialize. If successful, they would invariably be accompanied by a portion of their corresponding divine power. As Qin Ming played, he materialized these creatures one after another. The entire seven-stringed zither radiated an aura of extreme danger. The next moment, the 5 great experts were blasted off their altars, forced into brutal combat against the heavenly dragon, the golden-winged great pung, the golden crow, and the others. They were being suppressed, covered in blood, and severely wounded by these legendary beings. Capturing their essence is more than just a simple materialization of form. Then, Qin Ming struck the zither again. 5 strings shot out like arrows, piercing the 5 great experts and freezing their bodies in place. They realized with horror that their hearts had been shattered. The 5 great experts felt their bodies grow weak. They each looked down at their chests, and even the being made of flame was utterly terrified, consumed by boundless fear. The 5 strings of the zither abruptly withdrew. The 5 great experts stood frozen in the arena as the blurry altar collapsed and the illusory scene began to fade. Qin Ming continued to pluck the strings. The music was no longer so soaring and sharp but had become soft and gentle, like the shimmering surface of a sea reflecting the stars of the heavens, instilling a sense of peace and tranquility. The bodies of the 5 great experts were covered in crisscrossing cracks, and blood seeped from their wounds. Their spirits had also suffered a devastating blow. At the final moment, they all instinctively tried to flee. Any lingering resentment or desire to slay this villain no longer mattered. Survival was the only thing that truly counted. However, as Qin Ming's fingers swept forcefully across the entire ancient zither, a thunderous boom erupted, like crashing waves smashing against the shore and boulders hurtling through the air. The tranquility was shattered. The sea surface that had reflected the stars of the heavens, once so rare in its stillness and serenity, instantly transformed into a tsunami. Sword chi soared into the sky, and every crashing wave was a blade of sword light. How could the 5 totem seeds possibly withstand such a boiling sea of swords? In an instant, their bodies were shredded to pieces. During this process, Qin Ming waved his hand. The high-grade extraordinary blood contained within the silver giant bear, swirling with silver light and emitting a dense medicinal fragrance, was drawn over and settled into a spiritual crystal of extremely high purity. Many in the totem faction watched with eyes burning with rage. They felt that the people from Jade Capital were so similar in their methods of collecting high-grade extraordinary blood, also efficient, like skilled workers stocking goods. If they weren't cut from the same mold, they were close enough. They were all demons. There isn't a single good person in Jade Capital. A totem muttered through gritted teeth. The consciousnesses of the 5 totem seeds attempted to escape by projecting themselves out of their bodies, but they were ultimately overwhelmed by sword chi surging up from the vast sea of energy. Ah! Accompanied by piercing screams, they were rapidly marching toward their demise. The 7-stringed zither before Qin Ming dimmed, some of its strings broken, showing that casting such a spell consumed a great deal of energy. Finally, a faint shadow fled toward the edge of the battlefield. Ecstatic, it was the Tiān's consciousness light, which had actually managed to escape with difficulty. Watch out! Someone warned. However, it was already too late. A glowing piece of paper, accompanied by the symbols Gong, Sheng, Ju, Ji, and Yu, landed on him. You. Didn't you say you were just asking us to listen to the zither music? The Tiān struggled, roaring. Qin Ming replied, indeed. This is the lingering resonance of the zither's melody. The glowing paper was the physical manifestation of the musical score. As the final, exquisite notes emanated from it, they engulfed the Tiān's consciousness, its light flame being relentlessly strangled and extinguished. The final totem seed had thus been utterly destroyed, both in body and spirit. A night breeze swept through, and the lingering zither music gradually faded. Spiritual light rippled, the fading echoes. The 7-stringed zither and the musical score glowed and dissolved into countless tiny streams, returning to Qin Ming's body. He rose to his full height, his own presence ethereal and detached. Though he had just unleashed a lethal attack, not a single drop of blood stained him. He stood amidst the battlefield like a banished immortal, utterly transcendent. Incredible. As expected of Qin Ming. He mastered chaos force purely through his own efforts and defeated the 5 great totem seeds of the future with a single zither melody. Slaying enemies with such effortless grace, as if brushing away dust. In the Jade Capital, the younger generation erupted. Many stared intently at the figure in the center of the field, their eyes filled with fervent admiration. Even some immortal physical body cultivators began to question their own paths. They pondered whether they should study the Path of Awakening system, noting its high degree of overlap with their own and considering if it was worth serious emulation. This was the first time Qin Ming had displayed such power before the heavenly beings, and instantly, many found themselves unable to look away. Lu Jingli of the Heavenly Venerables family. She hasn't had much contact with Qin Ming, has she? No, not much. Look over there, the Huang family seems to be taking an interest. In many people's eyes, Qin Ming had just begun to show his true potential. Aside from his cultivation realm not being high enough, he had no other flaws. He was utterly radiant. Of course, this was mainly because those with quick wits had mentally conflated him with Tai, continuously elevating his status in their minds. Some people temporarily ignored the truth, the evidence, and so on, simply accepting his identity for the time being. Of course, not everyone held a positive attitude. For example, Xie Muza, a grandmaster of Xingqian Mountain, had met Qin Ming in Sky City, but their talks had soured, and they had ended up on bad terms. He was extremely aggressive and had once warned and intimidated Qin Ming, bluntly stating that adults must take responsibility for their own choices and actions. Right now, his expression was cold, and he said nothing. High above, Cheng Xian, a grandmaster of another great faction, was also frowning, muttering to himself, "Back then, I blocked his ascent to heaven and interfered with his acquisition of the supreme inheritance. Was that a good or bad thing?" In the past, he had descended to the ground, painting with ink in a mountain villa and spreading a rumor that nearly caused Meng Xinghai to die at the hands of a divine being from the three-eyed sect. His true intention, however, was to target Qin Ming. In the totem faction, the middle-aged generation's faces were all very grim. They simply couldn't swallow this insult. They were already deeply dissatisfied and wanted to teach that arrogant rogue a lesson. And yet, this was the result. 5 totem seeds, completely outmatched. The more the hot-headed ones watched and pondered, the more infuriated they became, staring at that figure, who possessed such an extraordinary, otherworldly aura. They felt a nauseating sense of wretchedness, as if they had swallowed something truly vile. A giant beast with 3 flood dragon heads spoke up. He's nearly exhausted. The 7-stringed zither has dimmed, and its last string even snapped. He's clearly at his limit. Who's going to seize this chance? Get up there and finish him off quickly. However, the totem seeds below the mid-stage 4th realm remained silent. No one responded. That murderous bastard might look like he had immortal chi, but his attacks were too brutal. The thought of the word, bastard, and its connotations of vulgarity and coarseness, made their hearts sink. Could this be where the trouble started? They wondered if Qin Ming had been provoked by such insults earlier, which drove him to publicly show off his skills, by demonstrating 2 of the 4 arts, zither and chess, before ruthlessly sweeping through his enemies here. Within the totem faction, the indignant experts repeatedly sent voice transmissions, asking if anyone would step forward. But the young prodigies, who had once boasted of their ability to defy stronger opponents, remained silent, one after another. Qin Ming felt a twinge of regret. His time on the stage was nearly up, and he wouldn't be able to rack up any more achievements. Looking at those cold eyes and the massive figures shrouded in blood qi, he could only sigh. All battle merits, all precious medicine and exotic metal. He was quite satisfied with having broken the rules and single-handedly defeated 8 enemies. Brother Ming can already kill grandmasters, yet he's still addicted to bullying the weak. Truly. In the distance, Bai Meng silently shook his head. Qin Ming sensed his gaze and turned to look, as if reading his younger brother's thoughts. He really wanted to say, "Don't you understand the joy of crushing noobs? It's mainly because your cultivation isn't high enough to possess such dominance." Clearly, Qin Ming had come to understand Cao Qianzhou's mindset. Using one's overwhelming power to crush all enemies indeed drew the world's hatred, but it brought immense self-satisfaction. Old Cao was actually very strong. Back then, he had provoked several founding ancestors to hunt him down, which spoke to his terrifying power. He was indeed hateful, capricious and acting solely on whim. If he passed through a place and disliked someone, he would simply slap them to death. After sweeping through all his enemies, Qin Ming thought of old Cao and sighed with a sense of kinship. Everyone has a Cao Qianzhou living in their heart, longing to look down upon the world. Seeing Qin Ming's gaze, Bai Meng immediately waved his hand. At the same time, he was filled with confusion and doubt. How could Brother Ming conceal his true cultivation in front of the senior figures without being detected? He naturally couldn't know about the tattered cloth, it was top secret. Back in the Great Yu Imperial capital, Qin Ming had already tested its concealing power in his final battle against Kui Chong. Thus, when summoned by the golden ranking this time, he wasn't worried about exposing any flaws before the senior figures. "I still want to play a game of Go. Any other fellow Taoists willing to face me?" Qin Ming sat cross-legged, refusing to leave. Before him, geomagnetic lines intertwined to form a massive chessboard. In his left and right hands, he held black and white stones, ready to make a move. Within the totem faction, the youths were seething with anger. Yet, the young faces in their own ranks were each more composed than the last, all remaining silent, none stepping forward to fight. Pushed to their limit, a young totem seed retorted, "If you're so capable, then sever time, erase your cultivation, and go up there yourself." Qinming replied, "If that's not an option, how about I paint a picture, and we have a literary duel instead?" From the totem faction, the five-colored exotic beast spoke with a dark expression, "Leave the arena immediately." Anyone could see that Qinming was reluctant to leave, as if he were loath to depart from the battlefield. This created a strange feeling. This was clearly a life and death struggle where one might not return alive, yet he had completely diffused the tension of a blood-soaked battlefield teetering on the edge of death. Qinming stood there quietly, like a gentle breeze smoothing over the brutal atmosphere of the battlefield, making people briefly forget the crimson blood and shattered bones. "Don't test my patience. If you break the rules and come down here, I'll kill you." The five-colored exotic beast threatened coldly. Qinming stared at it again and again, really wanting to say, "Don't worry, I'll be back." The five-colored exotic beast's entire body flowed with divine radiance, its massive frame brimming with Grandmaster-level power. It looked down at him and said, "What are you looking at? Even if you cultivate for another 20 years, you might not even be able to stand before me, unworthy of even being seen beside me." Qinming turned away freely, mentally noting the grudge for a future duel, and walked toward the edge of the field. The golden ranking spoke, "The older generation fights to the death to dominate the present era." Clearly, it was in a great mood. Looking at the totem sacred mountain opposite it, it continued, "The younger generation, however, is fighting for the future. Based on your current performance, your future is bleak. If you dare to disrespect Jade Capital again, whether your supreme civilization can even survive into the future will become questionable." With a wealth of talented followers beneath it, the golden ranking spoke with absolute confidence. As Qinming exited the battlefield and walked toward the edge, he immediately felt countless palpable gazes from the people of Jade Capital. He was now the center of everyone's attention. Even grandmasters from places like Lai's Thunder Marsh Palace, Zishao Purple Heaven Cave, and Heavenly God Ridge nodded to him, their intentions to draw him closer and win him over being quite obvious. "You want to know if my master has a betrothal or a Dao companion? You'd best ask him yourselves," Su Mohua said, finding herself surrounded by inquisitive onlookers. In the throng, Qinming spotted Tang Yusheng. She remained as confident as ever, her pale chin tilted high, practically, looking down her nose, at everyone. It was as if the one who had suffered a crushing defeat last time was Qinming, not her. Tang Yusheng sent a dismissive, disdainful glance his way, as if trying to erase the embarrassing memory of her sobbing like a child. Qinming merely smiled faintly. With a slight lift of his foot, he completely shattered the Big Tang's composure. The totem sacred mountain spoke, "Enough. This exchange has lost its original purpose. Let's conclude with a few final, ultimate battles." The string of losses had completely drained its patience, and a hint of unease had begun to creep in. In the depths of the night mist world, pairs of crimson eyes snapped open, radiating cold malice. The totem civilization had intended to be one of the players at the table, but now it feared becoming the prey. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel. Novel, Night Without Borders. Chapter 540, Lovers and Supreme Trump Cards Soaring Together, 5,390 plus words. Author, Chen Dong. Translator, Shadow Knight AK. Editor, Shadow Knight AK. In the totem faction, youths in the Grandmaster realm, such as the five-colored exotic beast and the three-headed giant beast, stared coldly at Qinming's retreating back, watching him fade into the distance in silence. Their hero, our mortal enemy. That young man had single-handedly killed 8 totem seeds, and his sheer presence had intimidated the other young opponents into not even daring to set foot on the battlefield. After a moment, some totems couldn't contain themselves and broke the silence. It's infuriating. The key is that madman boasted that he would single-handedly take on all opponents of the same level, but no one could actually stop him, and in the end, he withdrew from the battlefield unscathed. The eyes of the youths with higher cultivation levels in the totem faction held a deep, impenetrable chill. Even decades later, the mere thought of this event would likely still leave them feeling regretful and suffocated, as if a giant bear were pinning them to the ground and grinding them into the dirt. Furthermore, deep within the night mist world, countless major organizations were watching this enclave, and even the strongest experts of the supreme civilizations had opened their crimson eyes. The youth of the totem faction gradually began to feel a sense of guilt. After a series of defeats, this might lead other top civilizations to underestimate them, potentially triggering unpredictable and subtle changes. On the battlefield, Xie Xian, Wen Dao, and Wei Shuzhen stepped forward, standing like three great mountains as they slowly advanced toward the totem faction. Their status was transcendent. Having initially received the supreme inheritance of the Jade Capital, they were regarded as pivotal figures among the younger generation, capable of slaying grandmasters. Some even secretly speculated that among them, someone might have already broken through the shackles to become a true grandmaster. Qin Ming's figure vanished as he was teleported back to the Mountains and Seas realm by the Golden Ranking. On the Jade Capital side, many people were discussing him heatedly, showing high recognition of his abilities. To this day, he was actually still a rogue cultivator. Recruiting him as a son-in-law, or having an Earth Immortal take him as a disciple. These plans had already been listed as backup options by top Dao lineages. In this battle, even if Qin Ming hadn't completely defeated all his opponents in the early Fourth Realm, he had come close, leaving the young elites of the totem faction utterly silenced. If we don't work harder, we'll be threatened by him, Kui Chongxiao muttered with a solemn expression. If an abandoned son were to enter the Fourth Realm, it would likely put considerable pressure on him. His talent was indeed exceptionally outstanding. By the time he was nearly 30, he had already broken through to the seventh heaven of spirit communication, a truly astonishing speed. How else could he have been accepted as a disciple by Shi Tiān, the esoteric sect's renowned, heavenly god? For centuries, Shi Tiān had struck fear into Night Province, an old monster and a pioneer in the field of path opening. Alongside Chu Candlin, a true god who had now reached the seventh realm, they were known as the esoteric sect's peerless duo. Shi Tiān's standards were so high that ordinary geniuses couldn't even catch his eye. Kui Chongxiao's heart grew heavy. He felt as if the abandoned son was like a demon emerging from the abyss, about to break free from his shackles, enter the public eye, and begin his rise to power. The old ancestor of the Kui clan, Kui Zheng, who was in the sixth realm, had not missed the great battle this time and had been summoned. He cast a deep look in the direction where Qin Ming's figure had vanished. In the Mountains and Seas realm, Qin Ming appeared on a beautiful peak. This place was shrouded in white immortal mist, filled with Dao resonance, and completely isolated from the outside world. He knew he had once again entered his exclusive territory. It was no different from his own dressing room, where he could finally release his true self. He reckoned that the Golden Ranking would summon him to the stage without needing any prompting. After all, the ultimate showdown was approaching, and the legend of Grandpa Ming needed to be cemented. Qin Ming's bones crackled. His body shifted slightly, growing an inch taller, leaner, but not frail. Jing Jia Pai was about to make its debut. He mused that, under normal circumstances, the identity of one sword to cleave through the 36 heavens would likely never have the chance to appear. The only exception would be if the two supreme civilizations suddenly erupted into a bloody war without regard for the consequences, engulfing the entire enclave. No one knew the true level of Jing Jia Pai. Qin Ming didn't hold back, drawing all the essence, qi, and spirit he had channeled into the tattered cloth back into his own body. In an instant, his blood qi surged like a churning river. The vigorous power of life returned, leaving him in the best condition he had ever been. Qin Ming clenched his right fist, feeling as if he could crush a six-tusked white elephant with a single grip. Pure yang blood qi overflowed from his skin, forming a layer of divine radiance etched with intricate patterns. He hypnotized himself. I am Jing Jia Pai, walking the divine path of the esoteric sect. Outside, many people gasped in astonishment. The Golden Ranking had summoned the Jade Capital's core disciples, Yun Jianyu and Wu Qingyuan, to step forward. To everyone's surprise, these two were actually appearing. Initially, they were the only two core saints. Undoubtedly, their status was transcendent. A young man and woman appeared, both shrouded in brilliant divine rings like two rising suns. They instantly became the center of attention, sparking a wave of heated discussion. Soon, other voices rose from the Mountains and Seas realm. Where is Jing Jia Pai? One sword to cleave through the 36 heavens, and withered wood springs anew, why haven't they appeared? Let these top rankers come out and join the final battle. At first, only a few people shouted, but soon more joined in. Withered wood springs anew, from the name alone, we can guess he's not one of our generation. He must be quite old. I want to see one sword Yi Jian fight. I still remember him challenging the Black Tower civilization's strongest alone with a single sword and defeating their saint. Why hasn't he come? The Mountains and Seas realm buzzed with clamor. After all, both Jing Jia and One Sword Yi Jian had been utterly broken back then, yet they had still suppressed heavenly venerables, old barbarian gods, and Bodhi saints, all within the same domain. My OCD is kicking in. Since Tai has shown his face, let Jing Jia Pai and One Sword Yi Jian appear too. Tiān, obsessive-compulsive disorder OCD, is a mental health condition characterized by uncontrollable, recurring thoughts, obsessions, and repetitive behaviors, compulsions. Undoubtedly, there was a strong clamor for this. The golden ranking remained indifferent, offering no response. Shortly after, someone suggested a possibility, perhaps Jing Jiapai and one sword Yi Jian are also too old to participate. Some speculated that these two were peerless earth immortals, fitting for the 7th realm's ancient monster battlefield. After seeing Tai appear, we jumped to the conclusion that the two adjacent top rankers were also young. Now it seems we were mistaken. Upon hearing this, the golden ranking felt it could no longer remain silent or reserved. After all, the Jade Capital Realm was teeming with talent, with geniuses as numerous as carp crossing a river. How could it waste such a golden opportunity to showcase them? Jing Jiapai, enter the battle. One sword Yi Jian, stand by. As the golden ranking spoke, everyone in the mountains and seas realm was stunned. These two top rankers truly were youths. In the blink of an eye, a golden light spread out like a road, summoning a young man clad in crimson armor to the front of the two armies. The golden ranking said, "Wait aside for now." It fully demonstrated what it meant to be a land of exceptional talent. The Jade Capital Realm produced heaven-blessed prodigies in such abundance that the golden ranking seemed to suffer from a choice paralysis, unsure of whom to send into the fray. This is Jing Jiapai. He follows the divine path system. Back on the sword duel platform, he truly shone brilliantly, radiating blinding light. Many eyes were fixed on the young man standing imperturbably in the arena. His figure was imposing, but only the crimson glow of his armor was visible, as a faceplate concealed his features. At that moment, Li Wanfa, Wei Shuzhen, and Wen Dao all turned their gaze toward him. They could sense that this was someone who could stand equal to them, someone capable of slaying a grandmaster. Yun Jianyu, bathed in immortal radiance, stood with a graceful poise. She was as radiant as the morning sun rising over the clouds, as dazzling as a lotus emerging from clear waters. She, too, watched from the side. Once, one of her clones had entered the fray under the name, Heavenly Immortal, and had been defeated by Jing Jiapai on the sword duel platform. The golden ranking spoke, breaking the silence and drawing everyone's attention back. Xie Xian, Qian Cheng, step forward. Do not hold back. The crowd was stunned. Xie Xian's high status was well known, but who was this Qian Cheng? To send him out in such a momentous occasion. The golden ranking called again. Is there anyone from the Grandmaster domain who will step forward? Chang Shi, you shall make your move. Clearly, it had no intention of wasting time and wanted to bring this duel to a swift conclusion. The crowd was startled once more. The name, Chang Shi, had appeared prominently on the new rankings, and her other identities, such as Guanghen, had also been uncovered. Qin Ming stared at Chang Shi. She was the woman from the divine temple in Xiao Wu's home, the fourth forbidden zone. Qin Ming recalled their past spar. Afterward, Chang Shi had treated him to fragrant mist tea, and it was there that he had obtained the scripture revised by the ancestor of the Silk Book technique. He knew Chang Shi was exceptionally powerful, a master of various techniques, including those of the Path of Awakening. She had even once unleashed the heaven-severing force, a technique on par with the Tathagata force. Chang Shi, bathed in moonlight, appeared ethereal and otherworldly as she glided forward. As she raised her hand, a lunar wheel materialized at her fingertips. She was about to challenge the Grandmaster of the Totem faction. Suddenly, a violent thunderclap erupted nearby, as if someone were undergoing a heavenly tribulation. Countless thunder talismans filled the void, their sheer force scattering the night mist. A giant beast exploded instantly. Blood rained down, bones shattered, and its charred remains were flung across the battlefield. This was a renowned Grandmaster of the Totem faction, and he had been obliterated moments after his entrance. Both factions stood stunned. Many had just turned their gaze toward Grandmaster Chang Shi, only to find that the battle on the other side had already been decided. It's the Qian Cheng. The Jade Capital side erupted in a commotion. This obscure young man was actually this powerful. And his attack was so utterly domineering, unleashing the most righteous and yang-aligned thunder seals right from the start. What just happened? I only looked away for a second, and he already killed a Grandmaster. This is truly terrifying. Many were stunned. This Qian Cheng had been completely unknown before, yet his first move was a total trump card. On his very first appearance, he had killed a giant beast Grandmaster. Did this battle even last 15 moves? Not even half of that. My god, is this the ancient demon returning to his youth? This is too frightening. Not only were many from the Jade Capital stunned, but even their opponents fell silent for a moment. The Totem faction was already on the losing side of this battle. They had sent out one of their most frighteningly famous young experts, and yet, he had been defeated so quickly. Misfortunes never come singly. They were already at a disadvantage, and now they had been hit with a crushing blow. The words from the golden ranking, "The younger generation competes for the future," echoed in their ears once again. Could it be that if we don't humble ourselves, the next generation of Jade Capital will wipe us out? Looking at the performances of Tai, Qinming, and Qian Cheng, it seemed entirely possible. Even the totem sacred mountain was now shrouded in dark clouds. The future looked bleak. Even the most elite of their younger generation, who had been fast-tracked to the altar, couldn't stop the Jade Capital's peers. With a resounding bang, Xie Xian's opponent was sent flying. The blonde woman, her body covered in cracks, struggled to her feet and swallowed a precious medicine, desperate to stop her body from disintegrating. But it was too late. Her slender form was like paper, burning from within, light leaking out of the fissures on her skin. With a thunderous crash, she disintegrated, scattering blood rain everywhere. Her consciousness light met the same fate, seized by Xie Xian's outstretched black hand, which extinguished all light like a black hole. Who dares fight me? Wen Dao, the third core saint of the Jade Capital, stepped forward. He was a heaven-blessed prodigy recognized by all the ancient mountain sects in heaven, granted the right to occupy the third great Dao flower. A giant, as if emerging from the abyss, appeared. He was towering and imposing, his heavy footsteps shaking the ground. A vast shadow followed him, and he seemed to merge completely with the darkness. Without a word, he engaged Wen Dao in a fierce battle. The fight was brutal and bloody, like two young gods and demons tearing each other apart. Each lost an arm, their ribcages shattered, and several broken bones scattered across the ground. Finally, they were both thrown backward, their soul radiance dimming. The two combatants retreated, neither re-entering the fray. Wen Dao muttered, the power he displayed was terrifying, completely off the charts, no weaker than Xie Xian. But his opponent was also absurdly strong. An Earth Immortal spoke up, that giant doesn't seem to follow the totem system's techniques. He looks more like a true abyssal creature. Did you bring in an outside expert? Don't talk nonsense. An old totem snapped back. Wu Qingyuan entered the field. As one of the two original core saints of the Jade Capital, he was silent and serene, shrouded in auspicious clouds, his figure radiating light like the sun in the sky. He was confident and aloof, as if standing high in the ninth heaven, detached from the world. Without a word, he raised his hand toward his opponent, issuing a challenge. From the rear of the totem faction, a rare bird emerged. It resembled a pung but lacked golden wings, its plumage divided into black and white, its wings draped like a yin-yang diagram. The moment everyone saw it, they felt an immediate sense of danger, their hearts sinking. This seems to be a pure-blooded great pung, but mutated, perhaps even more terrifying. On the Jade Capital side, an elderly Earth Immortal spoke. Not all ancient monsters were qualified to step onto the Seventh Realm battlefield. His expression was grave as he discerned the truth. Even a saint as arrogant as Wu Qingyuan grew solemn upon sensing the opponent's chi aura. He became utterly serious, treating the threat with extreme gravity. Sure enough, after this battle erupted, he struggled immensely. Before long, his armor shattered, his shoulder was stained with blood, and his neck was torn open. The mutated Great Pung transformed into a young Taoist. His strikes were like the sky collapsing, causing the night sky to blur, then distort and cave in. During the slaughter, the young Taoist swept his wide sleeve as if to cover the heavens, obscuring the sky. Heavenly thunder and gale wind appeared simultaneously, then crashed down with a deafening roar. It looks like the primordial myriad thunder seal. Qian Cheng exclaimed in shock. With a thunderous boom, the wide sleeve descended like a dark cloud, enveloping the core saint Wu Qingyuan. Despite his movements across heaven and earth, Wu Qingyuan could not evade the sleeve and was submerged in thunderlight and gale wind. Immediately after, Wu Qingyuan was sent flying, his body torn asunder. His pure yang consciousness was nearly extinguished. At the critical moment, the special weapon on his person activated, wrapping around him and carrying him away. The Jade Capital Saint is nothing more than this. The young Taoist declared calmly. A special weapon was also activating on his own body, ready to deal with any sudden developments. Bathed in immortal radiance, he spoke little, yet his presence was both powerful and terrifying. An old Earth Immortal said in a deep voice, "These are definitely not techniques of your totem faction. You're just seeing things for the first time." An old totem of the Seventh Realm retorted, refusing to admit it. On the Jade Capital's side, many realized that the enemy had reinforcements. Perhaps another supreme civilization was backing them from the shadows, which was why they dared to invade. Gold Rankings spoke up. No big deal. Don't blame the external environment. We've long anticipated this day and are ready to challenge those crimson dojos deep within the night mist world at any time. Who's the hunter is still to be seen. Just then, Yun Jianyu stepped forward. The first core saint of Jade Capital was about to fight at full strength, her heavenly god and heavenly immortal clones merging into one. She was finally about to make her move. On the other side, Changxi found no opponent. None of the grandmasters from the totem faction would accept her challenge. A giant beast declared that they would wait for the other grandmasters to finish their duel first. In fact, at their level, any battle would inevitably end in life or death. The Grand Masters of the totem system felt that the duel was about to conclude and saw no need to interfere at the last moment. The young Taoist, who was the mutated Great Peng in disguise, was called back and did not fight the first saint of Jade Capital. Gold Rankings spoke again. What's the matter? Now that members of another supreme civilization have arrived, you're unwilling to let your core saint continue the bloody battle. Are you worried? It paused briefly before adding, if you want to test our strength, feel free to step down and fight. An ancient voice replied, we are merely here to lend a hand, out of old sentiment. We have no intention of waging an all-out war against your Jade Capital. Hypocrites. The gold ranking sneered. Then, it called forth its next combatants, Tang Yusheng and Yin Tian, a name no one had ever heard before. Meanwhile, the third battle of the seventh realm old monsters concluded with another victory for the Jade Capital. The gold rankings then summoned Zhou Kun for the fourth battle. Anyone who knew of Zhou Kun's origins trembled in shock. He was the most senior member among the ancient factions in heaven and one of its strongest. In his prime, this old monster was known as a half-step heavenly god. In fact, when the various divisions above the nine heavens were conducting the Feng Tian, Zhou Kun had been summoned from seclusion. The ancient factions had even spared the sap of the great Dao tree to restore his vitality and suppress the world. There was no doubt, this old monster was terrifyingly powerful. Above the sea of night mist, the seventh realm old monster's battle carried immense weight, determining which of the world's current powers was superior. The totem faction, refusing to believe their luck, sent out one of their top totem gods. The moment the two old monsters ascended to the heavens, the sky tore asunder, and a blinding light illuminated both heaven and earth. At that moment, the gold ranking was transmitting a message to Tang Yusheng, promising to temporarily sever the shackles on her bloodline, thereby allowing her to remain in a state of full awakening for the next month. Can't you sever them permanently? Tang Yusheng asked. The gold ranking solemnly replied, the bloodline shackles of the Lord of Jade Capital must ultimately be broken by you yourself. Tang Yusheng and Yin Tian each took the field to challenge any potential, outside reinforcements. Subsequently, Qin Ming, representing Jing Jia Pai, and the core Saint Yun Jianyu were also sent into battle. Boom. The battle between the ancient monsters from beyond the heavens concluded in the shortest time possible. Zhou Kun fought with unmatched divine might, truly living up to his reputation as the strongest enforcer, who had once carried the supreme treasures of Star Mountain, Purple Heaven Cave, and Thunder Marsh Palace to suppress all immortals on the surface. Before long, he had completely suppressed and killed the totem god. The fight ended faster than the battles of the younger generation, deciding life or death in an instant. At that moment, the totem's sacred mountain trembled violently, its dark clouds churning as its spirit grew restless. It had heard that Jade Capital had vanished and believed this supreme civilization was utterly decayed, nearing its end. It had come to seize an opportunity and to assert its dominance. Furthermore, it had accepted bribes from other supreme civilizations to probe Jade Capital's strength. It thought it had struck a windfall, but instead, it had kicked a steel plate and was about to break its own foot. The totem faction's young experts seemed to have few, outside help, among them. Only a few guest fighters appeared, and they were swiftly defeated by Yun Jianyu, Tang Yusheng, and Yin Tian. Hiss. Tang Yusheng and Yun Jianyu's cultivation techniques are so similar. Even if they weren't taught by the same teacher, they're almost identical. They look more like senior sisters than any other saints. That's the most core inheritance of the Jade Capital. At the same time, people also noticed that Yin Tian was equally extraordinary, with ingenious methods. They had never heard of him before, a true hidden gem. Although Jing Jia Pai, who had drawn much attention, had entered the fray, he found no opponents willing to face him. Qin Ming was extremely disappointed, he hadn't earned a single battle merit. The main reason was that when he appeared, the cheers were so loud that many people in the Shanhai realm had called out his name from the gold ranking, demanding he fight. This made his opponents hesitate. The young experts of the totem faction clearly heard the keyword, top rank, and naturally became extremely wary. In their view, the battle between the seventh realm ancient monsters was about to end, and their own fight wouldn't continue much longer. There was no need to risk their lives at the last moment. Qin Ming muttered to himself, I never thought I'd have a moment where my name alone could so severely intimidate my opponents. After Tang Yusheng cleanly and decisively defeated her opponent, she floated back, untainted by the dust of the mortal world. When Qin Ming looked over, she tilted her chin up and gave him a faint, dismissive glance. Anyone unaware of her true nature would see her as a cold, aloof goddess, an ethereal being forever out of reach. But Qin Ming knew better. In public, Tang Yusheng was the picture of a distant goddess, carrying herself with a grace that made her seem like a heavenly immortal descended to the mortal realm. In private, however, she was utterly down to earth. She'd cried after being beaten and would even tattle on him after a crushing defeat. Watching her put on this act, Qinming had to fight the urge to laugh out loud. Sage. The gold ranking called out again, summoning the ancestor of the Silk Book technique, one of the originators of the Chaos Force, the sage from Pu Gong, to fight the fifth match. A great red dragon soared into the sky, carrying the old sage, whose once smiling face had hardened into a mask of cold indifference. His voice echoed indifferently from above, "Who will fight me?" After a moment of silence, the sage asked again, "What's wrong? Are you all too afraid?" On Totem Sacred Mountain, dark clouds churned, reflecting the mountain's foul mood. Of the 7th Realm Old Monsters battles, only one had ended in a draw. They had lost 3 matches in a row. If word reached the depths of the Night Mist world, their entire faction would surely become prey. To avoid being targeted and belittled by others, the Totem faction would likely have to ally with other supreme civilizations, or more accurately, become semi-dependent on them. The Totem Sacred Mountain wanted to scream, "What the hell?" It had been swayed by some supreme civilization, getting carried away with the promises. Although it had reaped many benefits, wading into this muddy water had proven to be a disastrous mistake. The outcome was utterly miserable. Because it had just shown everyone that the seemingly powerful and vast Totem civilization was, in a critical moment, utterly useless. This time, it had exposed its own weakness. The various factions had promised them benefits to test Jade Capital's strength, but as the saying goes, a starved camel is still bigger than a horse. The Jade Capital has disappeared. How can they still be this strong? The Totem Sacred Mountain was bewildered and enraged, its mind racing with a flurry of thoughts. Recently, the Totem civilization had played both sides, maintaining good relations with all factions. They had been so flattered that they truly believed they could take down Jade Capital. Now, their halo had been stripped away, and they were on the verge of falling into the abyss. The Totem Sacred Mountain gazed into the distance and demanded, "Didn't you say you wanted to hunt the Jade Capital faction? What are you waiting for? Strike now." At that moment, a battle of the 7th realm erupted in the sky. A fierce totem at the pinnacle of its power soared into the night sky to challenge a sage who had mastered the chaos force. Boom. Above, in the heavens, it seemed as if heavenly thunder was detonating. Terrifying light intertwined, tearing the night veil asunder. The scene of the great battle was utterly horrifying. Qinming's heart trembled. As expected of one of the sources of chaos force, the sage was truly extraordinary. Just the aura he emitted allowed Qinming to capture an extraordinary Tao resonance, granting him a profound insight. At the same time, he understood. This sage had kept a low profile in Pugong for many years before declaring he had reached the 7th realm. He had likely broken through long ago. After all, rumors said the old Tathagata had once obtained a fragmented grotto heaven and gained great fortune. Otherwise, he would never have reached such heights and should have exploded long ago. Rumble. Chaos force poured down like immortal thunder, raging above the sea of night mist. The totem exploded, and a rain of blood flew everywhere. Stop! The Totem Sacred Mountain roared. However, in the night sky, a colossal hand, wreathed in chaos heavenly light, seized the totem's consciousness soul light and dragged it into the boundless darkness. The sage's supreme chaos force possessed a devouring attribute. While it might not be able to refine pure yang consciousness for its own use, it could certainly crush, erase, and cast it into the abyss. The Totem Sacred Mountain shook. The 108 divine spirit phantoms beneath it lifted it into the heavens, allowing it to unleash its boundless might to its heart's content. Simultaneously, the young giant beasts, abyss phantoms, and the ancient monsters preparing for battle were all summoned back, standing atop the boundless, majestic mountain. The gold ranking boomed, "You want to wage total war against me? It seems you've grown desperate after losing. Now that you know your true situation, you must have been forced to agree to the rude demands of other supreme civilizations." At the same time, Qin Ming, Tang Yusheng, and the others were also summoned back into the gold rankings mountains and seized Xuanhuan realm. Rumble. The Totem Sacred Mountain expanded, growing ever more boundless and immense, threatening to crush the very heavens. It shattered the entire sea of night mist as it charged toward the gold ranking. No one ever expected the final battle to erupt so suddenly. The different supreme Tao lineages had always tried to avoid a direct confrontation between the two major factions. Now, however, it was unstoppable. The highest level battle was about to begin. Qin Ming's heart raced. Then, he felt the special weapon on his person, the 5-colored treasure fragment, detach itself and hover beside him. It radiated a 5-colored light and spoke, "Feel it carefully. Such a grand spectacle occurs only once in many great eras. If you survive, you will surely reap immense rewards in the future." Qin Ming asked, "You're not fighting with me. You're going to act alone." The special weapon fragment spoke, "Your current level is not high enough. Your primary purpose is to provide me with emotional resonance, to awaken the me I once was. Rumble. In the distance, beyond the pitch-black totem sacred mountain, a magnificent silver sea emerged. It seemed another supreme civilization was about to join the battle. Qinming worried, can the Jade Capital hold out? The five-colored treasure fragment replied, the Jade Capital, after all, is one of the strongest civilizations. It has been preparing to challenge all its opponents single-handedly. Just wait and see. Even further away, a terrifying fluctuation rippled through the air. Even many ancient Earth immortals sensed that things were about to take a turn for the worse. Crash. Within the mountains and seas Shanghai realm, a nine-colored ice mountain emerged. Inside, ancient coffins were on the verge of breaking free, having already cracked a portion of the thick ice. This is. Qinming looked astonished. The five-colored treasure fragment said, the old lovers have accumulated quite a lot over the years. The great era for them to shine has finally arrived. Old lovers. Qinming was stunned. What kind of words were those? The five-colored treasure fragment said, the Tiān in Dao chain. Without the supreme law chain within their bodies, they wouldn't have endured this long. They're all old chain users now. In the distance, the four directions were shrouded in gray. In the sky, rivers and seas surged, and abysses emerged, all manifestations of the supreme civilization's trump cards and power, about to be unleashed. What can we do? Qinming asked. Here, even if he could kill grandmasters, he wouldn't be of much help. The five-colored fragment replied, this kind of large-scale collision isn't a struggle between individuals or a single Dao lineage. No matter how strong an individual is, they're not enough. It requires all immortals to fight in coordination. Everyone just needs to unleash themselves within the gold ranking. Qinming nodded. At this moment, there was no need for further thought or words. He would simply do his best. A decisive battle to the death. The five-colored treasure fragment's voice turned low. The great environment of heaven and earth has changed. When the primordial qi and Xuanhuan qi are completely exhausted, and the old fogies have mostly perished, perhaps it will be your generation's turn to clean up the mess. It seemed to be recalling the past. Its previous master, who had died in battle, also seemed to have been this young. Blank. End of chapter. Subscribe to the MTL World at Malworld 1 YouTube channel.